Good morning. My name is Kenyon McDuffie, at-large council member and chair of the Council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today is Wednesday, February 26, 2025, and we're convening this hearing in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually via Zoom. The time is now 9:38 a.m. and I'm calling to order this hearing. Today marks the committee's fifth and final performance oversight hearing, and we are hearing from government witnesses of the following agencies: the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Later, we'll have the Office of People's Counsel, as well as the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture. We will begin with opening statements from any of my colleagues who are joining before moving to government witness testimony and questions. As a reminder, government witnesses will have 7 minutes to provide their opening testimony before we go into rounds of questions. We are being joined in the committee by at-large Councilmember Robert White, and I'm going to turn to him shortly for an opening statement. But first, I want to let folks know that the first agency that we're going to be hearing from this morning is the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, or DMPED, as it's also known. DMPED is charged with developing the district's economic strategy, overseeing several aligned agencies, and managing the city's portfolio of real estate development projects. DMPED's mission is to execute the district's economic development priorities. This includes the creation and preservation of affordable housing, job creation and workforce development, and growing parts of the district's tax base. DMPED's policies and programs, according to its website, aim to create strong neighborhoods, expand and diversify the local economy, and provide residents with pathways to the middle class. With that, I'm going to now turn to my colleague, Robert White, to see if he has a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Chair McDuffie, and good morning, Deputy Mayor Albert, and to your team. While I'm not a member of this committee, I'm here today because DMPED's work is directly connected to the agencies in the committee I chair, the Committee on Housing. For those listening who aren't familiar with the way DC government is structured, Chairman McDuffie, myself, and our council colleagues work on the legislative side. We divide the different issues like housing, transportation, and education into committees, and a council member leads the oversight of each committee. The mayor and her team make up the executive branch. They divide up issues in a similar way, but instead of committees, each group is called a cluster. Deputy Mayor Albert leads the Planning and Economic Development Cluster, also called DMPED. 4 of the agencies in my committee on housing fall under that cluster: the Office of the Tenant Advocate, Department of Housing and Community Development, Housing Finance Agency, and the DC Housing Authority. On the legislative side, sometimes an issue spans 2 committees and the council member chairs share oversight over that issue. Today, I'll focus on one of the issues that Chair McDuffie and I share, which relates to the DC Housing Authority, the New Communities Initiative. In 2005, former Mayor Anthony Williams launched New Communities as a local version of a dwindling federal Hope 6 project. The vision for New Communities was to redevelop public housing communities, to break up concentrated poverty, which doesn't benefit anyone, by creating more housing for both the existing residents and new residents with more wealth, thereby changing a neighborhood from low income to mixed income, redeveloping substandard housing into modern, dignified housing, and providing case management for existing residents. Council adopted the New Communities Plan in 2006 and 2008, focusing on 4 neighborhoods: Berry Farm in Ward 8, Lincoln Heights and Richardson Dwellings in Ward 7, Temple Courts and Golden Rule Center in Ward 6, making up Northwest 1, and Park Morton in Ward 1. The proposal called for demolishing 1,500 public housing units. The district's plan was to replace each unit, allow current residents to return to affordable units, and then build the new development before demolishing the old one so that people could move in and weren't displaced. 20 years in, we've seen mixed results. Anticipated redevelopment timelines have been painfully slow. Public housing residents who lived in the same building for years have been forced to move away from their communities and their networks as years turned into decades. Take the historic Berry Farm, for example. The government built the 430-unit Berry Farm dwellings in 1941 on land obtained by free Black people after the Civil War. Several prominent DC residents called it home, including families who helped desegregate DC public schools and the youth who started the one and only Junkyard Band. Many years ago, the DC Housing Authority asked residents to leave and gave them vouchers to move across the city, promising they could return when they redeveloped Berry Farm. But the Housing Authority didn't start demolishing the buildings until 2019. Now some residents have been displaced for several years. Same with Park Morton, a 174 unit public housing community in Ward 1. As of last year's performance oversight responses, DMPED said that just 11 families had returned to replacement units near the property. The DC Housing Authority is about to undergo a massive assessment and redevelopment of most of our public housing stock. I'll ask the Housing Authority about their redevelopment plans at my committee's hearing on March 6th. Today, I'm looking forward to hearing about DMPED's involvement in this process. While the Housing Authority is an independent agency, DMPED plays a role in the redevelopment arm of the district, so I will ask questions to them about this issue today. And again, want to thank the Deputy Mayor and her team and Chair McDuffie for having me today.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Let me swear in the witnesses before you all turn to your testimony. I just ask that anybody from DMPED who plans to testify, please raise their right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll note that Mr. Jamie Smith, Scott. Jamie Scott responded in the affirmative virtually, so thank you for that. Now I'm going to turn to you, Deputy Mayor, for your opening testimony. Thank you all for being here this morning. Look forward to engaging with you all.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning, Chairperson McDuffie, Councilmember White, and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. My name is Nina Albert, and I'm the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I'm proud to lead an incredibly talented and dedicated group of public servants who are committed to delivering opportunity for the district's residents and businesses. It's my pleasure to provide testimony on DMPED's activities and achievements in fiscal years 24 and 25 to date. DMPED's work is guided by the goals identified in the DC Comeback Plan, which we've now framed along 4 pillars. The first is that we are ensuring that the district has housing that's accessible and affordable for all. Second, we're ensuring that DC is competitive for attracting and expanding business. Number 3, we are ensuring that DC is a premier cultural and entertainment destination. And number 4, we are a city where businesses and people of all backgrounds can thrive. Housing continues to be a top priority for the Bowser administration and for DMPED. 2024 was a significant year for housing as we surpassed our goal of delivering 36,000 new homes, a target which Mayor Bowser set in 2019 at the start of her second term. This historic milestone was a district-wide effort spurred by a vision and commitment to producing more housing in neighborhoods across all 8 wards, and which achievement made DC a leader not only in the region, but also nationally in housing production. However, as we publicly shared in February of this year, the district's affordable housing market is facing significant challenges, and we must together take urgent action to protect the investments we have made. DMPED worked with the council last fall to enact the Emergency Rental Assistance Reform Emergency Amendment Act of 2024. This legislation was a first critical step in helping address the rise of non-rental payment, which has ballooned to unprecedented levels over the past 3 years and should be made permanent. And as a result of what's been happening in the marketplace, for the first time in 10 years, DHCD has had to use Housing Production Trust Fund dollars to stabilize the market as opposed to focusing on new production or significant preservation projects. We don't believe that this is a sustainable approach, and we want to make sure that the district is able to invest in both preservation and production of affordable housing so that we can continue and to improve and grow housing options for DC residents. To that end, earlier this month, Mayor Bowser announced the Rental Act, which is comprehensive housing legislation that seeks to protect existing affordable housing as well as reset the conditions that the district continues to produce and maintain more housing. Another key DEMPED priority, as I mentioned, is supporting jobs and business growth. Mayor Bowser has invested significantly in local and small business growth, and DEMPED administers several programs that support local business expansion. In '24, DEMPED awarded $7 million to 41 small and local businesses through its Great Streets Retail Grants, Locally Made Manufacturing, and Neighborhood Prosperity Fund programs. These programs have had a transformative impact on our neighborhood corridors. And since 2015, these three programs have awarded over $49 million to more than 550 businesses across the district, creating 2,250 jobs for DC residents. In 2024, we also closed out the district's ARPA-funded economic relief programs, through which DEMPED invested $200 million in business relief and recovery and supported more than 2,500 businesses. I want to thank the DEMPED team for the enormous effort required to deploy these funds and help our small businesses weather and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. DEMPED also supports retailers and stores who provide our community with access to quality food. Mayor Bowser's investments through our Food Access Fund has helped close the access gap and bring more sit-down restaurants and eateries towards 5, 7, and 8. However, there is more work to be done, especially in wards 7 and 8, where we need to provide fresh and affordable groceries. We are currently actively revising the district's grocery attraction strategy for these wards, and we'll have more to share in the coming months. DEMPED also supports the high-growth industries identified in the Comeback Plan, which industries can help diversify our economy. For example, to support the tech startup economy, the district has made an investment in Station DC, which is a tech hub in Ward 5. Mayor Bowser and DEMPED also launched the DC Venture Capital Program, a new $26 million fund for investments for early-stage DC-based tech companies. This program is designed to match every dollar the district invests with an equal amount of private investment, effectively doubling the total funding available to DC businesses. Finally, DEMPED leads the government's efforts to leverage district-owned real estate for community-based development in all 8 wards. We've had some major victories this year, starting with, and very excitingly for the whole of the district community, we've gained control of the RFK campus. Planning activities for that campus are underway and will be advanced this spring. DEMPED also celebrated the opening of Reservoir Park Recreation Center this past June, and townhouse construction is underway and expected to be available later this year. At the parks at Walter Reed, we've helped 5 small local businesses open on the campus, and we remain focused on delivering more amenities for that project and its residents. We broke ground on the final phase of Skyland Town Center in Ward 7, which will deliver 126 for-sale townhomes and a 75-unit building for seniors that is 100% affordable. At Berry Farm, we welcome residents back to the community with the opening of the Asbury, aiming for full occupancy by the end of FY25. The next residential building at the site will achieve 50% construction completion by September of this year. The rental flats will achieve financial closing and commencement of construction by Q3 of FY25. St. Elizabeth's East continues to grow as a vibrant and thriving community. It's now home to the newly renamed Care First Arena, the sold-out townhome community at District Towns, and soon the Cedar Hill Regional Medical Center, GW Health, will open in April of 2025. On the St. Elizabeth's West campus, the federal government has begun work on the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency headquarters, further shaping the Congress Heights area. With more than 1,000 new housing units planned, St. Elizabeth's East is quickly becoming the city's most exciting place to work, live, and thrive. DEMPED continues also to advance planning efforts for the Chevy Chase Civic site, which includes the neighborhood library and community center. So with all of this good work that we've just mentioned, we have not lost our focus on downtown, given that downtown is DC's economic engine and home to the majority of our businesses and DC jobs. We've had some major wins in this last year, starting with our agreement with Monumental Sports and Entertainment to reinvest in the Capital One Arena. This once-in-a-generation opportunity to invest in our city's future will benefit the DC sports teams, fans, but more importantly, the city, our businesses, and the entire region. DEMPED also launched the Housing in Downtown program on March of 2024 and has since announced reservations for 3 HID developments, and we have more along the way. But to date, we can publicly proudly share that we have 750 units in the pipeline, 92 units of which will be affordable. We also launched in January of this year the Central Washington Activations Project's temporary tax abatement, what I like to colloquially call Office to Anything. This is a program that is designed to support the repositioning of outdated and obsolete office buildings into new retail space, hotels, world-class office space, restaurants, and other non-residential uses. In April, we also launched the DC Global Soft Landing Program, which is an effort to attract international businesses to downtown DC and help ease their entry into the U.S. market. And last but not least is the Vitality Fund, which will continue to ensure the district remains a prominent and prosperous place to live and work. To date, we've been able to secure 6 companies that have resulted in nearly 900 new retained jobs. This has committed these firms have committed $27 million in capital investment and have leased 155,000 leased square feet. So as we focus on the district's comeback, FY25 had multiple positive markers. Just to summarize, in 25, we set a record utilization of office, of 64% of pre-pandemic attendance. So we're back on the bounce. The DC resident population increased this past year. We added 13,000 new jobs in the district this past year. And our GDP has grown 2% in the last year. And then last but not least, there's so many markers in which the district is number 1 nationally, not least of which is that we're number 1 emerging tech hub and ranked the best state for tech careers in the nation. And then we also were just named as the best place for people to retire. And the list can go on and on. I would like to conclude my testimony by thanking the DEMPED team again for all of their hard work this past year. Without the dedication of the team, we would not have achieved the results that I have just listed and many more, which I'm sure we will dive into. I also want to thank Mayor Bowser for her continued leadership and support, as well as the partnership that we've enjoyed with this committee. I look forward to continuing our work together and to making sure that the district remains a great place to live, to work, and to thrive. This concludes my testimony. My staff and I are here to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your testimony. We do have some questions. We're going to start with 10-minute rounds. All right. I usually start with questions that really were spawned by witness testimony from my public witnesses a few weeks back. And so I'm going to begin with a few questions from the public. The committee received testimony from district residents cautioning the district against using public funding for the RFK site, which you mentioned in your testimony. I know that Mayor Bowser had a meeting. Ward 7 Councilman Wendell Felder attended. It was well attended, as I understand. And some of those witnesses testified about wanting community members to be an integral part of the planning process. I agree with that desire to see the community really help to drive the process. So I wanted to ask, how does DEMPED plan to engage the community in conversations and planning for the RFK site?
Well, thank you for that question. This is an incredibly important project for us. We kicked off, Councilmember Felder did, a community meeting. And just for people's awareness, this project is going to go through an environmental assessment, an EA process, as well as master planning process, which we plan to kick off this spring. That process in and of itself has community input built into it. And so I think that the community is going to be pleased with just the transparency and ability to weigh into what that project will become. I do want to reiterate a couple things, and I am looking at this project in my role as the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, which is how do we get great return on investment? And we are incredibly lucky in the district to be, we're not just the sports capital in name or in tagline. We actually have a tremendous opportunity that is centered around sports, professional sports, recreational sports, and amateur sports. And so when we take a look at that sum total, every dollar invested has to have return to the district. And I think that RFK in particular, particularly if there's a stadium that's there, will accelerate development on the east side of our city. And it will have tentacles and reach beyond the site itself into Ward 7, along 8th Street Northeast, and into Capitol Hill. And so that is the type of analysis that we are taking on. And we look forward to the conversation about, what level of investment is justified.
Talk a little bit about if you have any sort of preliminary thoughts about the timeline in which some of these things are going to happen. What can residents, community members, both people who live in the communities around and adjacent to the site and others who just are generally interested in supporting or being heard in opposition to what might happen? What's the timeline do you all envision in terms of some of these things happening that you just mentioned?
Well, I think so we are going to be beginning listening sessions here shortly. And so I would say within the next month, there will be different opportunities for people to weigh in. Right now, at this moment, people can already weigh in on our website. It's rfk.dc.gov. And so there's an immediate way for people to both get information as well as provide input. But we will be hosting kind of a series of different outreach. But the most important opportunity for a broad set of constituents who are interested in this project is through our EA and master planning process.
Okay, I appreciate that. The committee also received testimony from Eric Bennett, and Commissioner Shar Quintic McCrae from ANC 5D06 about recent closure of the CVS in Ward 5 at 845 Bladensburg Road Northeast at that intersection of Bladensburg Road and Maryland Avenue, Benning. And there are a lot of people, including a lot of seniors in that community, who are concerned about losing access to their prescriptions, and residents fearful that a vacant store on that site could lead to additional concerns and challenges with public safety on that corridor. Starburst Plaza, I'm sure you all are familiar with, and I know that Councilmember Parker, myself, and others who care about those communities have been working to support. So I wanted to ask, has DMPED had conversations with the property owner about the future plans for this site? And how long do folks anticipate this is going to be vacant at this community? What can residents expect the government to be doing to sort of facilitate some future development of that site, activation around that neighborhood?
So we also were aware of this, and we're disappointed to hear about CVS closing at this location. Just for context, CVS has had a nationwide program and strategy about where they keep stores open and which stores they will close. And unfortunately, we are starting to see that strategy being executed. And this store is among those locations that CVS had identified. I think everybody was surprised at the timing of it, which is unfortunate. However, we are in touch with the property owner. CVS continues to have an active lease. Even though the store operations are currently closed. We will be reaching out to CVS to see what their strategy for the District of Columbia is specifically. But anyway, as it pertains to what to expect next, we right now are sort of gathering information and trying to develop a strategy because that corridor is just incredibly important, the 8th Street Northeast corridor and what they call the Starburst.
Sure. Intersection of sort of 3 wards around that area, 2, 5, 6, and 7. Do you know how long the CVS lease is? I know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'm going to ask Jamie Scott if he knows the actual
Okay.
term.
if you could just state your name for the record so we have it.
Sure. My name is Jamie Scott. I serve as the Interim Director of Business Development at DEMPED. We do not currently know the existing term, but as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, we've been in touch with the property owner and we're trying to ascertain that information.
Okay, just FYI, Mr. Scott, sounds like your mic might not be close enough or sort of trailed off the end of your answer. I heard it, but it was sort of faint, just FYI. What about, who's the property owner?
It's East Bank.
East Bank, okay.
Is that right, Jamie? I just want to confirm. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Erica Waddington from the DC Building Industry Association spoke about the opportunity DEMPED has through the Executives Rental Act to usher in improvements to the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or TOPA, to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing while making sure equity investors in new buildings can easily invest in the development of housing in DC and then withdraw from the corporate structure in a timely manner. DEMPED's pre-hearing responses to the committee also indicated that its most urgent priority is to stabilize the district's housing ecosystem. In your testimony earlier, you stated that 69 affordable housing providers received financial relief in the latest consolidated RFP to preserve nearly 8,000 units of housing. Was this relief entirely focused on addressing rental arrears?
It was entirely focused on stabilizing different projects. In most cases, rental arrears have contributed to a project no longer being financially viable, but each project probably has a different profile. So I don't want to make an overarching statement that each project is, financially stressed only because of rental arrears, because that may or may not be the case.
Got it. And how are you all planning to use the Rental Act? First of all, has it been introduced yet?
It is in the process of being introduced. It has not.
Okay. How are you all planning to use the Rental Act, if approved by the council, to unlock the slower production timeline that the district has been facing? Production of housing.
Right. So, the district historically, and I think that this is truly a shared priority among all of the elected leaders within the District of Columbia, which is to produce more affordable housing and, as importantly, quality housing. And so the district has made extraordinary investments, both proposed by the mayor as well as adopted by the council, in terms of the budget support that we have implemented and deployed for the production of new housing. So the district is doing its job in terms of incentivizing new production. The market, the private marketplace, both at the market rate as well as affordable market. Remember that private investors and developers are developing both market rate and affordable housing. So they are subject, the private marketplace, and that can be non-for-profit private players, that can be for-profit, kind of the whole mix. The private marketplace is subject not just to the district's investments, but also to what lenders and what the financial markets require. So developers and investors in affordable housing are trying to pull together all the resources to make a project viable and to be able to build it and sustain it over time. And so what we are seeing right now is that on the investor side of the equation, not on the district side of the equation, on the investor side of the equation, they have identified the District of Columbia as a place that has high risk to invest in. And they're seeing that risk profile increase or worsen because of non-payment of rent, like just an increase. Councilmember White has asked in the past, like, do we have proof, or why is there a non-payment? Why is there an increase in non-payment of rent? We can't pinpoint everything, but to the investor, they're just tracking the number and the trend. And so the Rental Act identified different pieces in the process where we could influence and try and get the non-payment of rent concern back in line. We also have introduced some measures to broaden the availability of affordable housing to a bigger audience so that more people can qualify for housing. And this, ironically or interestingly, has the intended consequence of being able to further support investors, because now we've broadened the market to them. So the Rental Act is lots of little bits and pieces to try and reset the market and to indicate to the market that we are a good, reliable, and predictable place to invest. We believe that the sum total of what we've proposed achieves those goals. And we continue to want to work with the council on how to and where, what our shared policies will be to make sure that DC continues to be a great place to invest.
My time has expired on this round, so I'm going to turn to Councilmember White for a round.
Thank you, Chair McDuffie. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Going to new communities, which I spoke about in my opening, several agencies play key roles in new communities, including DCHA, DMPED, and others. What is DMPED's role in new communities?
Well, I think new communities portfolio came to DMPED maybe about 15 years ago or more. And it was at that time to support the Housing Authority and to make sure that we could secure the funding for these projects, as well as accelerate the process. We understand that what's at stake. We work on the new communities projects in partnership with the Housing Authority. At this very moment, the work that both DMPED and the Housing Authority have done has been to get these projects to a point where we are now executing on them. And so you'll see with each of the projects that you had listed earlier that we have progress, significant progress, and many of these projects are now starting to begin construction. But to explain what's happened over the last 10 plus years, there's multiple layers of complexity, as I'm sure you're aware, including a variety of lawsuits that have impacted some of the projects, and then also the complexities of having plans in place, funding in place, so that people who had homes or units in the projects have a place to go in the temporary while projects are having to be rebuilt, and then also have a pathway to getting back. So DMPED itself coordinates the funding. We validate that the projects have been delivered, and we also issue grants so that residents or organizations that support residents get deployed.
With respect to securing funding and accelerating timelines, Berry Farms is one. This is a new communities. To me, makes sense on paper. We have not done a good job executing it. Berry Farm residents have moved out since I've been on the council and Mayor Bowser has been mayor, and so this is one that's on our watch. What's the status of that project, which seems to be falling behind?
I'm going to turn to my Director of Real Estate, Pam Frenzelbaum.
Good morning, Councilmember White. Again, Pam Frenzelbaum, Director of Real Estate at DMPED. The status of Berry Farm, there are several components there underway. The Asbury recently delivered, that's 100 units of senior rental housing that's currently being leased up. The Edmondson is under construction. That is 139 units, and that is expected to deliver next year. And then we also have a large infrastructure effort underway, building the roads and getting ready the development parcels for future phases. So that is the activity that's going on at the site right now.
What's the timeline for full delivery?
I think I'll talk a little bit about the challenges and why these take so long, because it's an important question. And I realize the impact that this has on the residents' lives to be waiting so long to be able to move back to the place they call home. The timeline is heavily dependent on subsidies. And so, as you know, there is a limited amount of affordable housing subsidy available, both local and federal. And so that will, the build out will likely take until 2032. Because there are several more phases of vertical development. But that is, assuming that all the subsidy is there. And then while time passes, costs go up. And so the needle is always moving in terms of the amount of public subsidy that's needed to finance the vertical component of these projects.
None of those things are surprises. That's always the case. Construction cost goes up. We need subsidies, but we moved people out. So I'm distressed by a notion that we don't know how long it will take. I think it had been able to predict before we moved people out that the cost of construction was going to go up, that we needed subsidies. And so if we didn't have a plan for that, how do we justify having moved residents out?
Yeah, I mean, the actual demolition of the property and the move out of the residents happened several years ago before I came on board, so I can't speak to the decision-making.
But you are here on behalf of Mayor Bowser, who was in office. And so we do need to, and you can do it as a follow-up to the hearing if that's fair, because that's the concern residents have. That's the questions that we get in the community. How long is it going to take? Why didn't you factor these things in before you broke up our community? And we have to be able to answer those. So if you would follow up to the committee with a response on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, will do.
Thank you. The Housing Authority, and this is important because we're doing more of this, redevelopments, repositioning, and the DC Housing Authority is about to undergo a big redevelopment of several of its properties, something they call repositioning. What's DMPED's role in the DCHA repositioning process?
So we have more of a review role and partnership role with the Housing Authority. I believe that the current leadership team that's in place is prioritizing a whole variety of important decisions at the Housing Authority, and they've been very transparent with us, sharing with them what their repositioning study or repositioning plan includes, what partnership they need from the District of Columbia. And so we've been working very closely with them. From what I have seen to date, I think this is a very sound plan. But just like everything, particularly with housing, because developing and delivering housing is expensive, many things within their plan is going to require, as Director Frenselbaum had said, an investment by the district. And so that's where we all need to work together to determine what is the best way to support this repositioning plan and roll it out. But in essence, it is proposing to partner with private partners and bring private investment to the table so that they can deliver more quickly. And I think that that's a practice that DMPED has long had, that we have a lot of experience in. And so part of our role, again, is reviewing, being that because they're part of our cluster, our umbrella, working with them on the strategies and making sure that the district is aligned with the direction they're going in.
Okay, I appreciate that. Based on that response and a response on new communities, what I'm hearing is that we need to make extra sure that DCHA and DMPED and the council are on the same page before moving forward with projects, because with the repositioning, we don't want to see the same struggles that we've seen from new communities. That started 20 years ago. We're dealing with many of those struggles now, but the repositioning going forward, we have more knowledge of where those potholes are. Will DMPED provide data on how many original public housing residents have successfully returned to redeveloped sites, and what steps are being taken to increase that number?
I believe that we can provide that to you. We'll follow up.
Thank you. The 4 new community projects, again, Berry Farms, Northwest One, formerly Temple Courts and Golden Rule, Lincoln Heights, and Richardson Dwelling, and Park Morton. In DMPED's pre-hearing responses, you list Park Morton and Bruce Monroe separately, but those are part of the same new communities development. Is that right?
They're in the same geography, but we track them independently from each other.
Okay. And
But they're adjacent to each other, you're correct.
okay. And DMPED did not include an update on the Lincoln Heights, Richardson Dwellings, New Communities Project in the pre-hearing responses to question 103. At the DCHA board meeting in December, the board said DCHA would deliver a redevelopment plan in Q1 of 2025 this year. This month, the board pushed that back to Q3. Do you have any updates on that project?
Yes, what I can tell you about that project right now is the next step is for the Housing Authority to procure a developer for that site. They only recently, last year, received approval from HUD for the demolition and disposition of that property.
And do you have a timeline?
I do not.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move slow. Well, let me pause there since my time is almost up. Thank you very much. I'll probably do one more round.
Thank you, Councilmember White. I'm going to pick up with a couple more questions from some of our public witnesses who testified. The committee received a number of testimonies about the importance of Nourish DC for diverse small food businesses, and DMPED had a number of programs that were funded with federal money during the pandemic that were never intended to be made permanent. Is it accurate that there's no new money for Nourish DC in the current fiscal year 2025 budget?
I'll ask specifically Jamie Scott to answer about whether or not, anyway, to confirm how much money from the Nourish DC fund is available in 25. So Jamie?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I can confirm we have extended the grant with Capital Impact Partners, who's the program administrator for Nourish DC, to continue its services through FY26.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you,
Okay.
Mr. Scott. If you could just maybe speak up a little bit. And maybe there's even a delay on your end. Actually, now we can't hear you at all.
Period of performance for Capital Impact Partners, who is the
And that's much better.
Okay, this is better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I can confirm that we have extended the grant agreement we have with Capital Impact Partners, who is the program administrator for Nourish DC, through FY26. And there is an additional $1.9 million remaining, and we anticipate that Capital Impact Partners will offer another round of grants later this calendar year. So I can confirm that there is money still in the program, and Nourish DC is set up so that there's private matching of the district's investment at a required rate of 2-to-1, and the program administrator has been able to match to 3-to-1. So we expect
So you trailed off. You said the program administrator has been able to, and then you trailed off. If you could just keep your volume up on your end, if you could. I'm not sure what's
Sure.
going on.
I apologize for that. The program administrator has money remaining in the Nourish DC fund to continue offering grants and financing and technical assistance. And we expect those services to continue at least through FY26.
Okay, and then you said Capital Impact Partners is the program administrator?
That's correct.
Okay, and are they the ones who are responsible for securing the 2-to-1 match?
That's correct.
Okay. And does that money carry over? In other words, is the expectation that they will fund projects to the tune of 1.9 million in FY 2025, or is it possible that can carry over to FY 26?
It's likely it will carry over to FY26.
Okay. Do you know up until this point how many businesses have received Nourish DC funding, and what is the total amount that has been provided in funding through that program heretofore?
Sure, I can confirm the total number of recipients. That may need to be a follow-up, and confirm that the program has awarded $900,000 in grants and $18.5 million in financing. So that's loans that are provided to food businesses.
So 900,000 in grants and 18.5 million in financing in the form of loans.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. We may have some follow-up just to dig into the details of that program. It seems like it's a really popular program, and I know there's been a lot of interest and support for it in the community. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of people who testified specifically about wanting to see more funding for that program. Several witnesses also testified and submitted written testimony that they believe they have no voice with DMPED and their belief that equity is not prioritized in the redevelopment projects such as 1617 U Street Northwest. Park Morton was mentioned earlier by Councilmember White. Another project that's been mentioned by these witnesses is Chevy Chase, the civic site there, the community center and library. I want to give you, Deputy Mayor, or members of your team, the opportunity to respond to those critiques. I imagine you heard some of them when they provided that public witness testimony a few weeks ago. So I want to give you the opportunity to provide your response to those critiques. I'll stop there for a moment.
Sure. I'm disappointed to hear that there are constituents that don't feel like they have access to us. We are public servants, and people can reach out to us on all of these projects. Specifically for Chevy Chase, that site, we did extensive community outreach and went through what we call our RFP, which is a process that includes the community in the design of the RFP. So I think that we are available, and if people want to share with us their thoughts. But as you know, all of these big projects have lots of touch points and interest points, and they're not all able to satisfy everybody. However, we go through, as you know, because of the size of many of the projects that we sponsor or lead, there's a PUD process for many of them. There's different ways for the community to get engaged. But 1617U was another one where we spent a lot of time with the community, and we will continue to spend time with the community because that is a particularly challenging and difficult site. And then as for equity, I'm not exactly sure what the critique is. The district, the DMPED in particular, is the one negotiating with developers for equity inclusion at the financial equity level, for CBE inclusion in the construction process, for source inclusion in the construction process, and for affordable housing. And we have pushed these policies and really driven the market in those directions. And so I hope that those efforts and that leadership is recognized.
No, I appreciate the efforts with equity in that respect. And as you know, actually, the committee has actually driven those priorities and worked with the committee, worked with the office and the mayor on those priorities. And so I do appreciate that you all have really been steadfast in that respect. I think what they're referring to, though, is equity in terms of the community's input and the impact of possible development on what used to be known as Black Broadway, for example. I think that's kind of the critique that they're getting. Who's there? Who's in the community? Who has a voice? Is it the developers, or is it the developers and the folks who actually live there and are going to be most impacted by the project? I think that's what they were referring to.
We will relook and make sure that, we are available to people in the community for 1617U
Okay.
and any project.
Okay. The committee received testimony from public witnesses such as John Gugamos, Chair of the DC Nightlife Council, Jean Hamza, Community Liaison at IMP, recommending that the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture be moved under the umbrella of the Deputy Mayor, the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. What are your thoughts on that recommendation? They use New York as an example.
Yeah, different governments organize themselves differently, so there's no one right model. I actually think the model that we have now makes the most sense. We coordinate very closely with the Office of Nightlife, and any of the constituent offices to make sure that particularly since the Office of Nightlife deals with so many businesses as well as residents, of course, that are affected by nightlife in their neighborhoods. So the process and the organizational structure that we have now works very well. I'm not concerned with the setup.
Let me ask you, you're aware that they haven't had a director at that office?
I am aware, yes.
You're aware how long the director's been vacant?
I'm not aware specifically, but I'm not sure that it's been quite that long. Maybe 5 months? I don't know. I don't want to
Okay.
speculate.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's fine. But I guess the point that they were sort of making, or what they wanted to emphasize in that recommendation, is perhaps a lack of resources, and maybe a more strategic focus on the office and the engagement from an office like DMPED, and with leadership that you all have, the folks who are sitting at this table, so that it emanates down to the work that's happening out of the office. No criticism of the office. In fact, they really commended the deputy who's still there, but wanted and thought that there could be more strategic focus and more resources really directed to the work that's happening in that office. And so I think that was part of what they were concerned about, and not having the leadership be permanent. And then the coordination with the various other agencies that overlap, that is a priority for them. I don't know if you have a quick response to that part of my comments.
No, look, we can always strengthen the relationship and the strategies across government. And so particularly now, I mentioned of the 4 pillars, one of them is creating like a premier destination. And I think that closer collaboration is going to take place between our office and the Mayor's Office of Nightlife. So we'll take that to heart, and we'll continue to work on that, on improving that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Chair McDuffie. Last night, I held a Ward 8 budget town hall. On the way, I passed Berry Farms, and what caught my eye was the historic units. Some of the units were preserved because it is a historic site. Those units that were not demolished to be preserved did not look like they were in great condition, and I couldn't see signs that they were being protected. Who's in charge of protecting the historic structures at Berry Farm?
I believe it's the developer, but I will confirm.
Okay. Could you check in, confirm, and then also check in with the developer to make sure you all are comfortable with their preservation methods?
Yes.
Thank you. One other issue that came up last night was from a resident who is at the residences at St. Elizabeth. This is pretty brand new building. And they spoke to me about some incredibly concerning issues in the building, including infestation, flooding, and mold, and other issues. I'm going to go tour the building. But as I prepare for that, how does the city, when we invest so much money into projects like St. Elizabeth's, how do we ensure that this public money that goes to create this housing is creating housing that is going to stand the test of time and have residents living in places of dignity?
Well, just an overarching response is that, anything having to do with how the building is managed or maintained, is enforced or kind of looked into through, it depends on which agency has contributed funding to it. And so there is a mechanism for tenants to complain if they've exhausted their conversation with the landlord. It sounds to me that the example that you gave, you're talking about infestation of rodents or other kinds of infestation needs to be brought up immediately to the management and the property owners. If that is not getting attention, then that is something that, citizens should feel comfortable escalating through the district's processes. And they can feel comfortable sharing that with us as well so that we can get them directed to the right agency. The plumbing issues or some sort of flooding issue, that sounds very unusual, particularly for new construction. You have to remember that when a building is newly built, within that first 6 months or 12 months, there are adjustments or settling in of systems and testing of systems because they're now being used. And if that is something that is persistent, again, there's something more significantly and uniquely problematic, but that is very atypical. Again, I would suggest to any tenant or resident that is experiencing that to report that up through DHCD, the Department of Buildings, and if there's not getting quick enough response, then they're welcome to contact us.
Okay, they have reached out to the management company, that much I know. St. Elizabeth's was in your testimony as something that you were saying was an accomplishment of the administration. So I think it would be appropriate for them to be able to raise the issue with you. And I assume that we agree that buildings that new, built with public funds, should not be having these types of issues in such a short amount of time. Is that correct?
Correct. And I would say that there's probably something extraordinary or there's an explanation for what's happening, and we'll go find out what that is.
I appreciate it. Well, I'll work with you as we set up the tour so that you can join if you'd like, or someone from your team. The council passed resolutions for the new communities projects outlining the commitments made to families in the public housing units when new communities started. The mayors at the time introduced most of these resolutions. How does DMPED define success for public housing residents after a housing property is redeveloped?
Well, if it's a public housing project, the DCHA is really the owner and the maintainer, as well as the relationship manager with tenants. But to us, honestly, and I'm kind of making a broad statement here, but the mayor and we all have internalized very deeply the desire to produce enough housing for tenants at all income levels, but particularly lower income levels. And more importantly, as buildings are produced or units are produced, that quality of life is maintained. And so there's always work to be done to make sure that property owners, which by the way are not a monolith, there's all different kinds of property owners. Some are individual people who have decided that they are mission-based, but may or may not have all of the expertise. And then, of course, all the way up to large companies. And so it's our, intent to work with that broad spectrum of property owners to make sure that they're equipped, that they're technically capable, and that they are also supported in being able to provide quality housing.
Let me just double tap on something you said. Property owners cover the gamut. Most of them are good. Not all of them, like anybody in any other industry. But in terms of how we define success for public housing residents after housing property is redeveloped, I heard in your statement quality of life. Will we also agree that part of success would be the number of people and families who do return with that promise that they could return to the housing?
Yes, and I believe that a different project, like everyone's always learning and improving. And I'll use the example of the Greenleaf projects down in Southwest DC. It's a condition now that we build new units prior to moving residents out. So that obviously also has challenges because you need to have the space to be able to deliver those units in order to honor that commitment, which also has introduced a time lag, which you are aware of. So, I agree with you that making sure that folks are not unduly displaced without a near-term solution to return would be a good metric to track.
I appreciate it. And the bill first I think is the right concept. It presents difficulties, and I think that was originally in place for Greenleaf, and glad that that is still in place. And so I also believe, I think it sounds like we share this belief that measuring success for redevelopment of public housing includes understanding how many people have been able to claim that right to return. So I'd like to know the outcome for each family. Can DMPED provide this committee and the Committee on Housing with a chart outlining each commitment made for each property and the outcome for each family for the property? And my staff could work with you on what this might look like.
I know I can commit at the project level. We would have to look into and work with your staff on what's available at the family level.
Okay. We'll work with you on that. But I should say in the setting of this hearing, we did, the city, prior to me and prior to you, make promises to these families. But we are the ones in the seats now. And so we're the ones responsible for those promises. And I think it's fair to residents that we understand as a government what promises were made, who they were made to, and the status of those promises. Is that fair?
Yes, and we may have that information. So let's work together and we'll get back to you with what you're requesting.
Thank you very much. Those are all my questions. Thank you again, Deputy Mayor, and your team doing a lot of difficult and tremendous work, and appreciate the partnership that we've had. And thank you, Chair McDuffie, for your work and partnership as well.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Councilmember White talked about the meeting that he hosted in Ward 8 yesterday. And one of my staffers was approached with a couple of questions that I wanted to just ask specific to Ward 8. I know I met with some ANC commissioners yesterday and a couple of other community members from Ward 8. And they specifically raised some concerns about the BHG Washington, D.C. Treatment Center that's located at 1320 Marionberry Avenue Southeast, and that they had reached out to your office and other government offices, perhaps the Department of Health as well, expressing desire for the facility there to be relocated to the St. Elizabeth's campus. And it was their understanding, and apparently some historical records, that the facility there was always intended to be temporary, and temporary has turned into what appears to be a more permanent placement of that facility. Has DMPED made any commitments to support this relocation? If so, what's the current status of that?
I'm aware of this issue, and as well as the community's request on this. We have not been able to dig deeply into this. So let me use this opportunity to get back with you on what a solution could be.
Okay. It's a very challenging, are you familiar with that?
And it's challenging for a number of different reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's anyway, so why don't I provide a more thoughtful response?
I'd appreciate it. I know the community would appreciate it as well. Their impetus in meeting with me and really elevating this issue was really to drive economic development and just really opportunity for community serving amenities, but that the other issues perhaps not directly related to your portfolio are really creating a number of challenges, namely public safety and otherwise, that are really prohibiting or preventing the economic development of the opportunities that otherwise could exist at that site. So if you could provide a more thoughtful response, I'd appreciate that. I want to note, before I move to my next question, that we've been joined by Ward 7 council member and member of this committee, Wendell Felder. Thanks for joining, council member. I'll turn to you for a round in a moment. It's also my understanding from that meeting that, and the understanding of members of the community, including ANC commissioners representing that area around Anacostia, that DMPED has made a commitment to support the funding and really moving forward with a small area plan around that community, What's your understanding of that commitment, and do you have any status updates for the committee and the community?
Yeah, so we're not moving forward with a small area plan. What occurred to us is that we started to look at the timelines at which a certain number of projects were starting to deliver. It first started with the 11th Street Bridge Park, which is about to begin construction soon. We're looking at the Bridge District really delivering shortly. We finally began Poplar Point and the EA and master planning process. And so visioning what could happen with that significant parcel of property that's right on the waterfront at the foot of the Frederick Douglass Bridge. And last but not least is the ultimate aggregation and consolidation of Department of Homeland Security headquarters. And so we now have 2 more headquarters consolidating into St. Elizabeth, with only the last component waiting for federal funding in order to consolidate the entirety of DHS. So that's on St. Elizabeth West, which we believe has a very important relationship to the development potential at St. Elizabeth East. So when we took a look at all of these things and also listened to community leaders about what was missing, was a clear retail plan, an integrated design and plan for the Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue corridor, so that that avenue, that is an important historic avenue grounded by the Anacostia bid and the Arts District up at Marion Barry Avenue, all the way down to Bellevue. When you correlate that or think about the avenue as being akin to the different separate commercial nodes along Connecticut Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue, that there's a natural cadence of arrival at these different nodes, that's when a little light bulb went off, which is we need to start pulling these plans together so that they're integrated with one another. DDOT has a number of plans that they're implementing, and DMPED continues to make investments in retail, new businesses, and also with Cedar Hill, coming online. What is the vision for an integrated plan along Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue? And then lastly, I've also heard from the ANCs, and they have a funding request. They said, this is how we see economic development really stitching all of this together. And so we have thought about the clarity that the Downtown Action Plan has brought to downtown, where it hits lots of different elements, investment elements, large and small, near term, long term. And so we've really been thinking about bringing that same framework and structure to Ward 8 as well, so that there's clarity for outside investors, there's clarity for us internal to the district as to what components really can help catalyze and bring a great quality of experience and life to Ward 8, east of the river along Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue.
Well, I really appreciate that response, and it was a lot in what you just articulated. The thing that jumps out at me most is that question that you posed that I think the community has been posing to my office is like, what is the vision? It sounds like you've been given a lot of thought, but I think that I guess, would you be willing to work with the committee to meet with those folks to really share what you just shared on the
Yeah.
dais?
So I'm giving everybody a preview because we've been working behind the scenes trying to collect all of the information, and we would love to work with you on this
Okay.
and the community.
I mean, I think it'd be
obviously.
great for them to hear, and maybe they'd be inspired by some of the words you just shared about how you're thinking about this. And really give you an opportunity to hear from them too, which it sounds like you have been listening to them. They have been some communication, but I think giving them a forum in which they can hear what you're thinking about, how you all are approaching some of these plans, these communities, these corridors along Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Marion Avenue, how you're thinking about Poplar Point, how you think about St. Elizabeth East, how you think about the Arts District, I think would be really, really helpful to the community right now. So we'd love to work with you all in the near future, not too long. The budget is going to be coming down first week of April. If we can set up some time just so you can share your thoughts and how you're thinking about this, your office and some of the other offices, and then hear from them, I think that'd be great. Is something we can do?
Absolutely.
Okay, appreciate that. I've still got time. Let me turn to some development project updates. If we could, I'm gonna not get too elaborate in the responses unless you need to, but I would love to run down some of the large scale projects. A couple of them you've already mentioned, so I won't go down them, like St. Elizabeth's, Cedar Hill. Councilman Wright talked about Park Morton and the new community. So let's start with McMillan Reservoir Park area. What's the status of that project?
McMillan Park, the townhomes are delivering there. And the future phases of development include some multifamily buildings. So there's a PUD application that was submitted to make some minor modifications to the development program for that multifamily component. And then the medical office space, we still don't have a user for that yet.
And
So
that's probably something that is less visibility or less clarity around what or when timeframe wise anything's going to come on that third
that's right,
phase of office.
right?
Okay. Let me just move ahead because I don't want to take up too much time. I want to just run through these. But Skyline Town Center, what's happening in Skyline?
Skyline Town Center, also the townhomes are under construction. That project is moving along nicely. Construction is expected to be finished by the end of next year.
Okay, and just let's talk generally about how townhome construction and what the market is for townhomes right now.
I think townhome is one segment of the market, I think, where there's very strong demand. There's not a lot of available product type that's existing. So new townhomes are especially desirable. They provide the space that folks want where single family homeownership may not be as achievable. So it is it's a popular product and hope to find opportunities to provide more of it.
We talked generally about St. Elizabeth East, but if you could just a little bit more detail about what's happening, the status of some of the projects at St. Elizabeth East.
Yep. Again, the homeownership component there just recently finished. All of those townhomes have been sold. There are several upcoming multifamily projects and mixed-use projects in the wings. Parcels 7, 8, and 9 includes parcels 8 and 9, which are the historic reuse and conversion to office and community serving space needs. That legislation is expected to advance this year. Parcel 6 was a new award made last year. LDA negotiations are underway for that site. Parcel 13 was awarded several years ago. That project recently was extended. The legislation was extended or is in the process of being extended. But all of these projects will be somewhat dependent on subsidy availability.
Which one is parcel 13? Which one's the developer on that one?
Parcel 13 was the neighborhood development
Corporation.
company. Yes,
Got it.
right.
Okay.
And now is Dante's Partners.
How did that happen?
The DEMPED approved the assignment of that once NDC went out of business.
Okay. Did that happen last year?
That happened last year, yes.
Okay. Let me just run down these. Well, actually, I'll do it on another round. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Felder for a 10-minute round. Again, good morning to you. Thanks for joining, Councilmember Felder.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Deputy Mayor Albert, members of your senior leadership team. It's good to see you. As a former DEMPEDer, I appreciate all the work that you all do to provide economic vitality in our city. So thank you. And as a Ward 7 council member, I look forward to building a partnership and figuring out how we can make Ward 7 the best ward. So with that, I know you spoke a lot about the DC comeback plan. Could you provide an update on the progress made in the 3 priority areas identified in the comeback plan, specifically around supporting Black and brown businesses, helping Black, Indigenous people of color build economic sustainability and wealth, and providing opportunity-rich neighborhoods?
Sure. I love to tout what we've been doing. So in particular, you started with asking about Black-owned businesses. As you know, the comeback plan has a goal of achieving 33% of all of our businesses being owned by people of color. And so to date, we are about 3.3% away from our goal, meaning that at this moment, 29.7% of all businesses in the District of Columbia are owned by people of color. And we're extraordinarily proud of that accomplishment. In terms of making sure that each neighborhood has amenities, remember that today, post-COVID, everybody's been talking about 15-minute cities. What does that mean? In our terms, if you look throughout the District of Columbia, you can walk within your neighborhood, 15 minutes, and you should be able to have access to, a coffee shop and a grocery, sometimes you have to drive, obviously, but to amenities, a park system, green space, all of those types of things. That's what we include as an opportunity and an amenity-rich neighborhood. And so we've had very positive change. Number one, we have, as I've discussed in detail, really achieved huge housing goals. So as a basic amenity, we've also been able to produce more than 26 new food access points through wards 5, 7, and 8. So increasing that availability of food. One of the metrics in the comeback plan talk about all DC residents having access to affordable and high-speed internet. And as of 2023, 92% of DC residents have access to broadband. So we're only 8% away from our goal. Lastly, we're making sure that and have a metric for Black median income increasing by $25,000 per household. And right now, between 2021 and 2023, we've been able to increase Black median income by $7,600. So we still have work to do, both on job growth as well as on job pathway or job trajectory, but we continue to have a focus on that.
When you talk about metrics, since the implementation of the district's comeback plan, by any chance, would you happen to have a ward layout of the progress tracking your priorities of the district's comeback plan?
For housing, we do.
Okay.
I'll have to take a look at the other metrics,
Okay.
but I'm sure that we can break that down.
All right, thank you. DMPED has invested in programs like the Commercial Property Acquisition Fund, Food Access Fund, and Great Streets Neighborhood Prosperity Funds. How has these programs specifically impacted Black and Brown business ownership in the district? And I know you talked about earlier, you're 3 points away from hitting that 33% targeted goal, but is there any other observations that you've noticed since being the deputy mayor for planning and economic development?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I've visited with many, many different businesses that have been the beneficiaries of a variety of different grant programs, both administered by DMPED as well as by DSLBD. And I have to say, I'm just incredibly proud of the entrepreneurs and their vision and what they're doing, as well as my team and DSLBD's team that is supporting these businesses. And so a majority, and I'll get you an exact number, of these programs benefit Black and Brown businesses. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Scott, maybe to address some of the specific programs that you mentioned, like CPAF and Great Streets and Neighborhood Prosperity, which are the grants that DMPED manages specifically.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And hopefully my audio is a little more hopefully you can hear me better this time. I've joined by phone.
Yes, we can hear you better.
Okay, terrific. I can confirm for the Commercial Property Acquisition Fund, since the program launched, we've supported 30 small businesses, more than 90% of whom are report themselves as being people of color. So that program in particular has been very impactful at supporting Black and Brown business owners. And for Great Streets and Neighborhood Prosperity Fund, we can get you the exact numbers for those programs. But for Neighborhood Prosperity Fund in particular, the purpose of that program is to invest in neighborhoods that lack retail amenities, that may have higher concentrations of poverty or higher unemployment rates. For Great Streets, we're investing primarily in emerging commercial corridors across the city. There are 16 Great Streets corridors, many of which are in wards 5, 7, and 8. And so we can get you the exact numbers on the breakdown of the recipients for those programs.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, could you speak to any challenges that you've encountered in increasing minority business ownership to that 33% goal outlined within the DC Comeback Plan? In addition to that, what are some of the strategies that the agencies that you oversee doing to address that in conjunction with your agency?
Well, I'll start with what I think governments need to do when they are promoting and really trying to grow an economy, right? We do this already in the tech sector, but it can also be applied to, communities that have historically not had access to starting a new business. And so there's kind of three ingredients. One is providing technical assistance so that an emerging business or a new entrepreneur can understand the legal landscape, the corporate landscape, the financial landscape of what they're about to embark into. So technical assistance is one leg of the stool. Access to capital is another. And the District of Columbia, under Mayor Bowser's leadership and with the support of the council, has really been through the different grant programs that we've been talking about, investing to grow. And then the third, where I believe we can continue to make progress, is creating the network that gives new entrepreneurs or growing businesses access to all different kinds of people within the network, whether that's B2B opportunities, that's typically done in partnership with the DC Chamber as an example, or with access to capital providers, or understanding sort of what the research and the data is showing. So those are the three legs of the stool. Some of the challenges that we've had, or opportunities, I would say, is again, making sure that our system is easy to navigate, so that people who are entrepreneurs and want to get into the space know how to get access to the capital that we're providing. Also have an easy path to getting the technical assistance. So again, just making, and this will be a theme in general, how do we make the processes and the programs that we have in the District of Columbia as easy for our entrepreneurs to take advantage of? And our CBE program, where we commit ourselves to contracting with local DC businesses, again, easy to access, so that that contributes to their growth.
Oh, I have a compliance question later, but I do want to get one more question off during this round. My at-large council member colleague, Robert White, talked about a lot about new communities. A lot of those questions that I had were answered, but specifically around Lincoln Heights, I have a follow-up question. When I worked for DMPED, we were in the process of working on Berry Farm, and following Berry Farm was Lincoln Heights. It seems like there's been a shift. How do you prioritize which new community projects do you guys go after first?
Well, I'll just open up real quick and then have Director Frenzelbaum speak more to it. But we've been going on all fronts. And so sometimes the project itself dictates what advances and what doesn't advance. So I'll give an example. At Park Morton, there was a lawsuit that caused the project to be put on hold until that was resolved. In terms of Berry Farm, there were a number of different hurdles that we've been getting through, and it's a massive project. And so we've always held funding for that project because as soon as those hurdles were crossed, we wanted to be ready to be able to execute. And now we're starting to see that happen. But Pam, is there anything else that you might want to add?
Well, just on Lincoln Heights and Richardson dwellings, I'll just add that the housing, these are sites that the Housing Authority owns, and so they have a HUD process to go through, and the timing for that is, we don't have much control over how long it takes for HUD to process a demolition and disposition application that DCHA submits. So in this case, for whatever reason, it took very long to get through HUD. And again, that was just recently approved by HUD last year. So the Housing Authority is now moving forward with the next step being selection of a developer, solicitation for a developer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. I want to pick up where I left off with just some brief project updates. There are a couple of projects that I actually coincidentally are in Ward 7, but this one that I'm asking about now is in Ward 3, Chevy Chase Civic Site.
Yes, the next step is to hold our community meeting where we will have the developers present their proposals. That is planned for the end of March. And then the record will remain open for 60 days. We anticipate a selection in June.
Poplar Point,
Poplar Point, the EA environmental assessment and master plan process just kicked off this month. We held our first public meeting just a couple of weeks ago. So that is moving along. We are continuing to coordinate closely with NPS on the land transfer activities that are required.
okay. And how long do you anticipate the EA process will take?
We hope to wrap that up by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, got it. What about Reef Center?
Reef Center is one of those projects that's been really challenged by the economic climate and market conditions. Those challenges have necessitated a change in the capital structure of the deal, which is requiring some reevaluation and coordination with the development team just to see, how we get to a development program and capital structure that's feasible that will allow us to move forward.
Do you expect you'll need to come back to the council for any approvals in order to keep things moving?
We will be advancing legislation for that project this year, yes.
This year?
Yes.
Okay. What about Hill East, Phase 2?
Hill East, again, the development teams there, Bundle 1 and Bundle 2, challenges again with financing, trying to access affordable housing subsidy that isn't readily available. But Bundle 1, they're in for foundation to grade permit. They will be ready to go and start construction next year, assuming they can find the financing. And
Who's the developer on Bundle 1?
that is Donatelli and Blue Sky.
Okay. And Bundle 2 is, what's the status of that one?
Bundle 2, yeah, they are a little bit further behind in that their design and permit drawings aren't as advanced as Bundle 1, but they are also kind of reevaluating their financial structure, trying to see if they can come up with a viable financing plan for the projects to move forward.
And do you anticipate any need to come back to the council to provide any type of approvals to move those projects forward, or will they move forward independently?
They should be able to move forward independently.
Okay. What about Fletcher Johnson?
Fletcher Johnson, we are negotiating the LDA demolition on this. I'll talk about the site activities first. Demolition is expected to begin in April and conclude by the summer. We are hoping to have the UHS pad site ready by the end of this year. We are working with both UHS and the Fletcher Johnson development team to negotiate the LDAs and get those advanced to council in the next couple of months.
And Capital Gateway?
Capital Gateway, we are continuing with our grocery attraction efforts. We would like to find a grocer there. It may not be giant, but in conjunction with our grocery attraction efforts, we're also looking to do a little bit of planning to look at the market and take a deeper dive into what community needs are around food access, fresh food, pharmacy, all of these things that people have traditionally relied on full service grocery stores for, just to be able to assess the needs and make sure that we are, planning the site to meet those needs in whatever form is going to be viable in this market.
How are things going with Lido, which is a grocer that has seemed to be making, not seems to be, but has made significant investment in the District of Columbia over the last few years? They've opened up, I don't know how many stores, maybe you know the exact number of stores, but in different parts of the city, including east of the Anacostia River, namely Ward 7. The other I'll ask about, in addition to Lidl, is Aldi, who just opened up a new store recently in Ward 5. That seems to be popular, at least in my household. It seems to be popular. How they're doing generally, and are they seeing sort of a return on their investment? Any concerns with any of the new sites that have opened recently? I know there's one in Ward 3. There's I think that's a Lidl on Wisconsin Avenue, close to the Fannie Mae site.
So so just taking a quick step back on grocery in general, like the marketplace is shifting quite a bit, and we're seeing that now. So the traditional large format grocer, all on a single floor, that's changing. Sometimes, the Targets and Walmarts have tried urban formats where they could have smaller footprints or footprints on a couple floors. We're seeing now actually more smaller stores come around. So anywhere between 20 to 30,000 square feet, as opposed to a more traditionally sized 50 to 70,000 square feet. So those are the adjustments that we're paying attention to, and also different price points. So right now you're seeing grocers at the top of the price point, but you're also seeing a significant number of grocers who are trying to compete on price, and they're developing new models. That's what Aldi and Lidl are coming into. Trader Joe's is another one of those. And so we're interested in providing across the city lots of different grocery stores and formats with different types of offerings at different price points. I spoke with Lidl last at ICSC, and they continue to remain bullish on the District of Columbia, and they continue to be interested in all parts of the District of Columbia. So we continue to talk to them. We're also talking to other entrants that are exploring doing business in the District of Columbia, and I think that the opportunity for for communication is when there are new offerings with new types of brands or products that those grocers, work with the community to share what they have to offer, because it might be slightly different than what a traditional grocer offers. And I think it's all pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just really, I know there's a desire of residents that live, in areas of the city that don't have full service grocers to have the sort of access to your Aldi's, to your Lidl's, to your Trader Joe's. And I know there are challenges sometimes to making that happen. I know that you've been active at ICSC, the mayor's been active attending ICSC, and I know firsthand in being in those meetings with the mayor and my colleagues, the lengths that we've gone to try to facilitate that. So it's good to hear from you about how those grocers are doing. You mentioned in your testimony, I can't remember where it was, but the supermarket tax incentive program. I know you all recently expanded that. Talk a little bit about why you sought to expand that. I know areas of downtown were included. There were some concerns about, the desire to expand it to areas of downtown without necessarily getting some of the newer grocers or new opportunities in areas of the city that need it. I have talked to you about it, but I'd love for you to just put on the record the thinking behind that and what that means for areas of the city, both where you've expanded it, but also the areas where I think it already exists, but still sometimes there's just challenge in trying to get a grocer there.
So I'll start with downtown first and why we did that. Downtown is sort of a new market for residential and for a grocer. So you offer incentives in general to get a store to think differently about an area that maybe they would have thought about before. So now there's an inducement or incentive to say, hey, we know that this is a growing residential neighborhood that's not there yet, but we want you to come in and be a first mover, because grocery, as well as green space and other types of community amenities, is inherently important to supporting a residential community. And so that was the reason for expanding the supermarket tax credit to downtown. In terms of Does this change our focus on areas that do not have the ratio of grocery store per capita that we desire? It does not change that focus. We are both very focused between the economic partnership, all of our different groups within DEMPED, which includes business development, the Jamie Scott leads, real estate, the Pam leads, and myself personally, we continue to remain focused. What I will say, and this goes back to what people expect or are used to, and what I think we should be pivoting and thinking more broadly about, is different formats of grocery. Because now people are having groceries delivered to their homes, and that's a change in the grocery marketplace than maybe you had before. So how does that change access for our residents to grocery? For example, what are these different formats of stores that might be smaller, and who's interested in coming into the marketplace? What are new brand names of stores that are looking to expand from either being in the Northeast, being in the Southeast, being on the West Coast, that want to explore DC as a marketplace because of the supermarket tax credit? And so I say, I'm open to exploring all these opportunities, and that's how we're going to bring a variety of grocery stores, types of grocers, and a variety of income price points that I think is really important.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Felder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Deputy Mayor, you may have partially answered my question, but it was given that Ward 7 and 8 suffers from, being highly populated with living in food insecurity locations. What specific strategies does your office have to attract a full service grocery store? And I heard you mention a lot about the supermarket tax credit. Is there any other initiatives or incentives that you want to speak of?
Well, I think that in particularly Ward 7, depending on the size of the grocery store, it needs to be embedded within a development. So there needs to be a place for the grocer to go. Right now, we mentioned East Capitol Gateway. Obviously, the timeline of getting through the lawsuit that exists at that site is puts a grocer who will make a decision a year or two in advance. It's a very short decision time making time frame. They're not going to make a commitment for something that's so far out or uncertain. So I believe that we need to get through the lawsuit so we have control of the site and can execute, and that will shift the dynamic in the conversations that we have with grocers or any other food providers at East Capitol Gateway. At Minnesota Benning, we have an opportunity there. And again, we're working with the developer to advance that project. So again, we have a home, we have a place for any new grocers to go.
Based on the recent grocer that was opened in Ward 7 was Lidl, how are you assessing the effectiveness of your incentives to attract grocery stores?
Well, the effectiveness of incentives does two things. One is it puts a conversation on the table. That's the value of the Vitality Fund, is that when businesses are looking where to invest next, there's something that we have as an inducement to have a real conversation and to pull them in. So that's one component of the supermarket tax credit. In other cases, it's about closing a gap. But money isn't everything. I mean, we've seen even with East Capitol Gateway, I mean, we've had a substantial, hold on, it's shifted between 20 to $30 million, but the timing of the project is what is hindering the conversation from advancing. And so, we continue, Washington Economic Partnership's been an incredible partner for us. They have a focus on retail. They continue to reach out to grocers, and we are active in having conversations. And I think honestly that we're going to see some movement now. And with the redevelopment of the RFK campus, I believe that will bring a density of activity that will also act as an inducement and a new reason to have a conversation.
Thank you. Shifting gears, surrounding community engagement, making sure that neighbors' voices are heard, and DEMPED incorporates the feedback in the implementation of your projects. How do you go about with collecting community input?
Well, when we have a project that's in development, that is usually the time where community engagement ramps up. I think the chairman asked me a question earlier about 1617 U Street and a comment that there wasn't adequate community engagement. But as I've learned, there were 23 formal meetings around 1617 U. And so as a project comes on board or is being planned, in this case now, what's active is Chevy Chase site. We will share with the community sort of what the opportunity is and start to engage them either through meetings, sometimes through visioning sessions. And at this moment, we're about to embark on a comp plan, which will be a citywide community engagement on what they see as the future of DC through 2050.
When DMPED, when a new project goes online, how do you make the determination of if you're going to issue an RFP or the traditional RFP?
It just sort of depends on the scale or the complexity of the site.
Okay. Looking ahead, and you may have just answered that question, but what are DMPED priority goals for the upcoming fiscal year? I know you talked about a community engagement comprehensive.
We are following the same 4 pillars that I had mentioned earlier. So this coming fiscal year, my theme is operationalize. So we set our goals and priorities last year. This year, we need to execute in full force. So for example, around our high growth industries, we need to build up both the capacity, resource, and expertise to be able to, create the networking activities that support those high growth industries, attract and retain talent here in the District of Columbia, as well as bring more capital to this region to support those high growth industries. So in partnership with the Economic Development Partner, Washington DC Economic Partnership and ourselves, we're building up that capacity. In terms of housing, we're going to be setting a new goal for housing this year. And so that is a big focus of ours, as well as getting the Rental Act passed and making sure that our marketplace continues to be a good place for housing investors to invest. 3, we have an opportunity to really make DC a world-class premier cultural and entertainment destination. And so through the work of the Gallery Place Chinatown Task Force for Gallery Place, but we're also looking at other entertainment districts that are sports anchored or culturally anchored, really developing out those strategies. And then last but not least, we continue to focus on thriving neighborhoods and on providing opportunities for a diverse set of businesses.
Deputy Mayor, in the responses that your team provided, I saw that in FY 2024, you added 2 new positions, the Director of Downtown Innovation and the Director of Destination Development. There's been a lot of focus on downtown, which I appreciate, but I'm all about Ward 7. Have you considered establishing a similar role, specifically in Ward 7 and 8? And I know at one point in time, DMPED had a east of the river director. So why was there a shift? Well, I know probably why there was a shift, but have you given any thought about bringing on an additional FTE to focus specifically on Ward 7? And if you want to throw Ward 8 in that category, you can do that as well.
So we'll look into that. Right now, given all of the activity that's taking place east of the river, that's one of the reasons that we're really interested in kind of developing this integrated action plan. And so let's have that conversation again after I understand what the full scope of work that would be affiliated with delivering the action plan is, and whether or not it would be useful to have a dedicated person to that. Let me just say, Latrina Owens is our Executive Director of St. Elizabeth's and is really a highly connected part of the community and really leads a lot of the coordination around our, at least around Congress Heights. And then now, obviously, with both RFK and Poplar Point coming online, our real estate team and Director Frenzelbaum in particular is very engaged in leading those efforts and all of the related economic development activity that will result from that. And so there's leadership in place right now that's really designed around executing on these catalytic projects.
Copy. I know, just a follow-up, you mentioned the district's comeback plan. You mentioned your downtown plan. Have your office given any thought to developing a ward-specific economic development plan? What about Ward 7, for example, and you mentioned nodes. I think you and I have had conversations about placing nodes within every ANC commission. Have you thought about how the district, specifically in your role, can be a little bit more innovative and helping craft a Ward 7 economic development plan specifically?
Well, we could work on that together.
Okay. My final question, kudos to the meeting that we hosted, myself and Mayor Bowser. You came out and talked about the future of RFK, which is in Ward 7. Have you given any thought in providing scenarios of what the redevelopment of RFK could be with the stadium and or without a stadium?
Yeah, we're at the beginning of that process and we're looking at both of those alternatives. As the mayor has said, investment in this site is going to require infrastructure, whether it includes a stadium or is a mixed-use project without one.
Absolutely. And I know the value of having an anchor, and we're Ward 7, we're the only ward without an anchor. So I'm looking forward to working with you and the mayor to change that. Well, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my time. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. I'm going to we've been joined by Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, a member of this committee. So I'm going to turn to you for a 10-minute round, and I'm going to move to 7-minute rounds afterwards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to fit it all in one round if I can. Madam Deputy Mayor, good to see you and good to see you again. Thanks for coming out yesterday to the Capitol Hill Bid annual meeting. I know they very much appreciated having you and the mayor there. So thank you for coming out for that. I want to start just to kind of, you and I have talked about this before, so I don't think this is any surprise, just kind of have a chance to talk about it in this setting. One of the things that we heard a lot of last year was frustration on some of our smaller commercial corridors from a lot of necessary and needed investments in a downtown, part of our downtown recovery, but a feeling by some of our smaller commercial corridors, a feeling a little left behind and left out. And when you and I have talked about this, about how we help prioritize that we can do both. We've got to make sure we're investing in downtown, of course, but we also want to invest in our small corridors. We've tried to take a lot of steps, everything from expanding some of our Great Streets applications and opportunities there to doubling the small business tax credit, which really focuses on our small businesses. You and I had a conversation about H Street. I wanted to kind of pick that up a little bit around, it is an incredibly long corridor from, depending on how you define it, 2nd or 3rd Street, all the way to the Starburst Plaza at 15th. The retail corridor itself is just a challenge. And how do you want to use your office, both in the past year and then in the upcoming year, to focus on retail strategies? How do we help recognize that over the course of 13 blocks, using this corridor as an example, it's not a uniform approach. There's going to be a lot of tailoring that has to happen. Just want to give you a chance to talk about how you want to spend the next couple of months and over the course of next year to focus on a corridor like that definitely needs more attention and help, but could really also benefit from some focused strategy to it.
Well, I appreciate this question. Number one, because what you said is absolutely true. We have talked a lot about downtown because downtown is such an economic engine, but we internally have not lost focus on all of the different neighborhoods, particularly where there's commercial activity and areas where we also want to produce more housing. So right now, I think we are all understanding and have a better sense of what the impact post-COVID of telework is, not just on downtown, but also to all of our retailers, because there was a trend already moving towards internet or delivery-based retail. And so the retail industry has been hit particularly hard. We've been lucky in the District of Columbia that, restaurants, have continued to emerge and grow. But right now, the retail industry is doing one of two things. It's either sort of falling back into more traditional retail metrics and a retail environment. And you're seeing that at Georgetown. That's why Georgetown continues to be back to pre-pandemic retail occupancy. Because it's a very, as you mentioned, 8th Street's very long. But in Georgetown, it's very highly concentrated retail. And so that's one trend that retailers are going in. And then another trend that retailers are going in are either to operate at the very high end of the marketplace, which is kind of in that luxury or, they wouldn't say class A, but, kind of high end of the market, and also at the ultra convenience end of the market, which one-stop shopping. And so we're seeing, and that was a trend pre-COVID, accelerated because of COVID. And so the question is, what happens with 8th Street, which had a little blend of both? We are going to be this year concentrating on 8th Street as well as a couple key other corridors throughout the city. We're going to be launching a retail study throughout the city. Both my chief of staff herself is engaged and leading this effort so that we can get all of government approach. But then Jamie Scott and his team are really going to focus on that retail strategy. And it's going to include downtown, but outside of downtown as well, because I will remind people that downtown also has some retail challenges. But I think there's great opportunity for corridors like 8th Street. And I'll say why. 8th Street has opportunities for neighborhood-serving retail, because there's a whole variety of residents that are there that still need pet services, drugstore, grocery store, all those things, coffee shop, bookstores, that kind of neighborhood-serving retail. But because of the infrastructure investments that we've made, because of its location in between Union Station and hopefully a new RFK stadium development, I think you're going to have a corridor that's quite long today that's bookended by two anchors, and we should really work together on figuring out what that retail plan is. And then I think there's going to be room for, just like we did with Gallery Place Chinatown, what's that public space refresh that really gets people to come back to 8th Street and explore it again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to partnering with you on that 8th Street retail study and focus. I will just make a shameless plug that this Saturday, we have a lot of activities happening on the 8th Street corridor, and a lot of our local businesses and leaders have stepped up to organize a whole theme of Mardi Gras. So whether you want to go get beignets at Bullfrog or go get some specialty cocktails or join in a second line parade that's going to go all the way down the corridor, a lot of exciting things coming this Saturday on 8th Street. Let me move to one end of 8th Street, but it's not really 8th Street focused. That's Union Station. I don't view this as just a transportation project. This is a massive economic development project. I don't view it as a Ward 6 project. This is not even a DC project. It is a regional project. The expansion of Union Station is going to help modernize it. I think it's a once in a century type of opportunity, and it will also generate hundreds, if not thousands, of new residents, new commercial activity, new businesses, lots of new jobs, as well as move people in our region in a great way. One of the things that I think it has struggled with is having the district engage in the project, not just as a transportation project. I think DDOT's been highly engaged, so everything from Hopscotch Bridge reconstruction, others. Are you sitting, for example, on the board with the U.S. Redevelopment Corporation? Can you just share a little about, and hopefully I've got time to hit the last piece, is that kind of that coordination between your office and things like other agencies that aren't necessarily economic development, but certainly it really all gets tied together?
So for Union Station specifically, I am the mayor's designee to be on the board of directors of Union Station. Specifically, I was identified as having the combination of transportation background, real estate, and very complex real estate, rights of way, air rights issues. And then also obviously just the economic development leadership that's needed. So I'm very grateful to be the mayor's designee on that important project. And as you said, that is a regional investment. The reason it's so important, just for context, Union Station is the station with the second most, only to New York, ridership and throughput. And so it is time, it's been several decades since a major investment in that station has been made by the federal government or by the region, and it is time.
It's a federally owned asset.
It is a
So the
federally owned
government needs to
asset.
put money in.
And it's very, very complicated because as we all know, there's VRE, there's MARC, there's WMATA, there's multiple private bus lines and other transportation providers in addition to Amtrak that go through there. And this kind of project requires regional collaboration. And I'll use the example of Moynihan Station up in New York. That is a project of similar scale and attention and historic value. And so it took a very significant set of stakeholders that were vested and championing that project. And so I'm happy to be the district's champion.
That's great. I appreciate that. I've known you for a long time, and I know you to be very good at what you do. I know you're also being asked to prioritize a lot of projects in the district at the same time. So my ask is to make sure this is a top priority as well as the many different projects that you and your team are working on. Last question I want to ask is, how are you coordinating with many of our other agencies? I'll give two examples. When we've got ABCA focused on trying to move people into a legal licensed cannabis marketplace, but also go after illegal businesses that I think are actually having a detrimental economic impact on corridors. Or working with Department of Buildings when we have vacant properties that aren't being maintained or not thinking about temporary uses. How is your office coordinating with your other agencies across government that may not sit in your cluster, but certainly the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development can have a role in the big picture and pull them all together?
So I will share, there's been an update to the DEMPED cluster, which now includes DLCP, DOB, ABCA, and DISB. So I think that that's a perfect alignment. We at the, kind of at our level in the office of the deputy mayor are really focused on understanding not only their businesses and getting, kind of reacquainting ourselves with what their needs are, but we're looking at how can we support, improvement of process across these different agencies so that businesses, have an easier time doing business. But there's a lot of question about enforcement because that's where I think there's a lot of pain point for mainly our residents and our businesses. And so I think that there's a broader policy discussion to be had around the value and importance of enforcement and how we can fund that and support that work because it's difficult actually if you don't have adequate resource, personnel, expertise to enforce. And so I believe that DOB is prioritizing as well as DLCP and ABCA enforcement, and they're shifting around their internal their internal personnel to make sure that we can achieve that balance a little bit better.
Okay, great. I know I'm over time, so I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Deputy Mayor, I want to talk a little bit about a program that I think you all announced yesterday or recently, and that's the DC Venture Capital Program, a program that I know that I'm interested in, and I think you all are really interested in, and hopefully there's going to be significant interest in the market. But K Street Capital and DMPED are now accepting applications for fund managers to manage the $26 million fund that will make equity investments for early stage and DC-based tech companies. I love the DC-based component of that too. But I wanted to just ask, how was K Street Capital selected as the program administrator for that program?
So I'll turn it over to Jamie in a moment to go into more detail, but in essence, we ran an RFP.
Okay.
And they submitted and they were the best qualified. They're also a locally based venture capital firm.
Yep. K Street Capital and DIPED are seeking applications from both established and first-time venture capital funds managed by qualified venture capital firms. And I'm sort of taking from the website, and their related fund managers to invest in DC-based early-stage companies. The RFA that's out, the request for applications that's out, is that something that you all created, or did K Street Capital create that?
Both.
Okay. and
So
Capital-
K Street Capital designed it because obviously they're the experts in venture capital, but we obviously had a very important role in reviewing and contributing to it.
Okay. And is it also, in this process, is it also taking into consideration how they're going to be looking to make sure that they are attracting, in terms of the applications and the interest, emerging firms and fund managers in that process?
Yeah, so they have designed an outreach program specifically to make sure that people are aware of this and really ask questions about it and really understand if they are if they want to go for it.
And also just so I don't think that people always think about DC as the place for tech companies to be or get founded or what have you. I know you all have been taking some strides and working to improve that environment. I think to a certain extent it already exists. You mentioned what you all are doing with the Capital Factory, and I know we work together with you, myself and the chairman. I visited, they're doing amazing work over there. And so we have seen, I think, some great strides over the last few years, and it sounds like there's a lot more in store. And this is yet another example with the DC Venture Capital Program. But in terms of the DC-based, in the same way that you're looking at making sure that you're expanding, casting a wide net for those emerging funds and fund managers, I would encourage you to do the same thing for the DC-based businesses so that they also are aware of this opportunity and get the opportunity to compete to perhaps manage some of the funds.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll probably have some follow-up on this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I wanted to mention it. I know there's something that just you all just announced, and it sounds very exciting. And so we'll follow up on some of that. Let me turn next to the Gallery Place Chinatown Task Force. The committee has really heard repeatedly from the Save Chinatown Solidarity Network DC on the importance of centering community voices in the vision and planning for Chinatown. It's my understanding that DMPED has had several conversations with this organization. Do you have any additional community outreach plan, and what is DMPED committing to do as more concrete plans for the investments in the neighborhood unfold?
I appreciate this question. As you know, I've been personally invested and spend a lot of time on this, and thank you for serving on the task force. So remember what the task force was about originally. It was about a team of people coming together who have significant expertise in neighborhood revitalization. And so it was pulled together in January after it was announced that Monumental Sports was entertaining moving across the river to Virginia. And so the question on the table was, how do you take 1.5 blocks right in the middle of our major cultural and entertainment neighborhood and reposition that? And so that's what the task force was designed and tasked to do, is really re-envision that. As soon in March, when we knew that Monumental Sports was going to stay in Washington, D.C., the task force pivoted their activities and their focus onto how do you take advantage and refresh, re-energize all of the activities in Chinatown, in Gallery Place, Chinatown. This includes 18 cultural institutions, by the way, and theaters, in addition to the arena. And so we have come up with, and we're going to be sharing sort of all of the accomplishments of the task force this spring, and look forward to announcing all of that. But we're also going to be launching the next phase, which is really, we've designed, and the task force is making recommendations for what should happen next and what investments should happen next, and the deeper work of reaching out to specific communities. And so not only are we going to be looking to kind of build and deepen the relationship between those 18 cultural and theater and entertainment institutions, But we also will be looking at a retail strategy for that area, which is something I had mentioned retail earlier. So Gallery Place Chinatown is among one of those important areas to reassess and evaluate. And then to your point, Chinatown. How do we preserve it in its authenticity in the community that's existing, both the residential community and the business community, but also how do we introduce the new and the next? Because, there is a great opportunity to celebrate what was, but also to bring in new businesses, new attractions, new amenities for the community that's
Yeah,
there.
I agree, but I just want to urge you to continue and to stay committed to communicating and engaging with specifically some of the old aspects of that Chinatown community and really hearing their concerns, addressing their concerns, and how you're thinking about what the future of that Chinatown Gallery Place community looks like. And specifically engaging with the Save Chinatown Solidarity Network, because they've been active and in some instances have felt like they have not had a forum in which to really discuss some of the things that they'd like to see incorporated into the future vision for that area.
I will continue to do that. I've personally met with at least components of the Save Chinatown, group to talk about specifically, different residential needs and priorities. We've offered solutions and we'll continue to offer solutions, but it is a dialogue that must happen. And we are just getting started. So.
And is the task force meeting anytime soon?
The task force will be meeting, and I think we're going to be concluding our work here shortly.
I was gonna, so the conclusion you anticipate will be this spring?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I am
The
over.
conclusion of the task force, and then we're going to have work that
Right.
continues and follows thereafter.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna transition to talking about HID and HANTA in my next round, but I am over for this round, so I'm gonna turn to Councilmember Allen for another round.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It'll probably be my last round here. One of the things I wanted to talk about for a moment is a bit of the intersection between the committee I chair on transportation and the environment and this work here. One of the things I wanted to try to ask you a couple of questions and get a better understanding around, and it kind of pivots right off of our downtown conversation. I think where we ultimately landed with Cap One Arena is the right thing. I think it's vitally important that we have this arena that is providing near year-round activity. I'm excited about what this can be, and I defend and think it's right that we're putting public investment into this property. It is absolutely what we should be doing. The concern that I've got has to do with where we see the Green Buildings Act requirements come in with the proposal. I don't recall when we had the proposal in front of us, any conversation around that by the district owning the facility now, which has a whole bunch of other benefits that come with that, that it would now be subject to the Green Buildings Act, nor that the city would be seeking to get exemptions from that, or Monumental be seeking exemptions. So I wanted to ask a little bit more about that. Was that a consideration that we knew when we were negotiating that? Did that come up after the fact? I think the Green Buildings Advisory Council has been working with Monumental to try to find its way forward, but I am concerned that we're asking for a whole bunch of exemptions. This should be the flagship. If this is going to be a DC-owned property, we're putting a huge public investment into it, which is it's the right thing to do. But how do we make sure it complies with the law and our net zero goals?
So during the negotiations and during the discussion, particularly as we were understanding what requirements would shift or change when the district became owner, this did come up. And so what the contract provides for is that Monumental Sports complies and goes through the regular approval process, which is what they're in the middle of doing right now with the Green Building Advisory Council. As you know, I've been long a proponent of sustainable buildings, of green buildings. I'm also a pragmatist and believe that there is things that we are not fully prepared for as a city to go completely net zero. And I think that an arena building, particularly an existing arena building, it's not new, it's existing, has particular challenges because of its absolute scale, and also what you can do in retrofitting. And so I think we've got to recognize what the limitations are, potentially technically, and the cost if we were to try and overcome those technicalities. So I have not been engaged deeply in the debate or the analysis of whether of the conversations between Monumental Sports and the Green Building Advisory Council. What I'd like to ask of all parties is to meet the intent of the law, and to the extent that it's not financially practicable, or because of the technical limitations related to retrofitting a building, or the fact that this is a significant size building that has different dynamics. I mean, the doors are open all the time, and all of that. And the fact that our grid is not fully green yet. I mean, we're not running off of 100, and that's usually where these massive buildings, particularly urban areas, needs to be engaged in conversation. If we are achieving and desiring to achieve a net zero, landscape, it can't all fall to the asset owner. It's just not, it's too difficult. And we're asking a lot. And so that's, to me, kind of that through line. And I hope that all parties can start to work together on that.
Well, in terms of the grid, we've just cut the ribbon just a couple of months back on the Mount Vernon Triangle substation, which specifically addresses our downtown demands and needs. I do think the Green Building Advisory Council has done a good job of pushing back on the initial approach because I'll be honest, the first cut seemed to say, we just don't have the time to comply with anything and we don't really know what's happening. That was not an okay response from Monumental in terms of what they were putting forward with an exemption. I think there's been a healthy pushback and they've come back now to try to make some changes. It's not going to comply with the law. But I do think the Green Buildings Advisory Council has pushed this to be better than it otherwise would have been. It felt like, from my perspective, them coming in, if this was discussed on the front end and back during the negotiation, it didn't get reflected in what they came in, because they came in asking for a straight up, just, we want to be exempt from this. And I appreciate what you're just saying. I don't think their first cut matched that goal, and I think that's something that the GBAC has pushed back on, and I want to see them land in a better space. And from a retrofit perspective, I do think you are correct that it is, we're in that situation, we're talking about a retrofit of a building that already exists. Again, I don't think the expansion is hard to turn that expansion portion to net zero. But one of the questions that's being highlighted with this huge investment in Cap One, $500 million, and not being net zero, but being a retrofit. If we move towards an RFK site that has a large stadium or any other significant investment there, I don't know if there's a scenario where we own an asset on that space, but as part of those negotiations and conversations, are you asking that to be a net zero facility?
So we are not at that stage of or level of detail of conversation. But I'm glad you mentioned it. I think the RFK site holds different opportunities. It's right on the water. Maybe geothermal has a role in this. So there's different opportunities to unlock different options that are not available to the Capital One Arena, for example. I'm glad you brought this up. I obviously read the news as well and see what the different dialogue has been, but we will work with Monumental Sports to make sure that they are responsive. Yeah, I think RFK Stadium can, I call it RFK Stadium because that's what it's always been called.
It's called
But that the
campus
site,
now. Yeah.
but that the site, that we will explore all opportunities to unlock maybe some new solutions that, again, are unique to that site.
Well, everything I hear is that a proposal may be coming and there's a active and ongoing negotiations and coming up with a concept to put forward. So if this isn't being a part of the conversation right now, that's concerning, because obviously any amount of infrastructure work, any amount of planning, you kind of got to decide, is this a goal or not? So I would strongly encourage this is the exact time that conversation should be happening because that'll help inform decisions that get made. And I think again, it is what our flagship sites should be. We patted ourselves on the back when Nats Ballpark opened up with a LEED certification. That's now just kind of become the bare minimum. So I know we can do a lot more and better, and would ask you that you make sure that becomes part of the priority within the conversations that are going on. I know I'm over my time, so Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and your team.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Deputy Mayor, turning to the Housing in Downtown program, and Office to Anything conversion program. DMPED in its pre-hearing response to question 58 provided an overview of the early results of both programs. And for the benefit of the public, could you summarize those results? What has DMPED seen? Housing in Downtown has been around longer, but given changing market conditions, I'd like for you to just sort of compare and contrast the take-up of both programs and potential developer interest in one program versus the other.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So first of all, just it's hard. I wouldn't try to compare and contrast because one program had almost 9 months of advanced release. So anyway, for Housing in Downtown, we currently have announced, let's see, 4 conditionally approved commercial to residential developments. And these would collectively produce 973 units. And remember that there is an affordability requirement that's included in our Housing in Downtown program, which means that 10% of those units would be provided at 60% of MFI or below. And so that's what it's resulted in so far. Right now, what we've seen is a little bit of a lull in the uptick of applicants to that project. We do have a couple more projects in the pipeline that we're not ready to announce today, but there continue to be interested applications. However, on the private sector side, without Housing in Downtown, we are seeing a number of office to residential conversions. To make sure that we take advantage of the project, we've also seen that demand for office to residential applications is also coming from the west end of downtown and into Georgetown. And so we recently submitted and changed or updating the regulations to expand the project area or the eligible area.
So I'm glad you finished on that point. I have 2 areas for follow-up. Do you know the total number, or at least maybe you do, the total number of private sector office to residential conversions that are currently in the process?
By our count, there are about 40 private sector.
I heard that number in some conversations that I had and was wondering whether or not that was accurate. Seems like there's a lot of interest in the private sector to do it. Why is there then a lull in?
I think
What
it's
those applications?
preparedness in some cases. Some property owners were actively looking at repositioning assets, through COVID and as they looked at the marketplace. And so, and so we got through that first wave. I think people also wanted to see how the program performed and whether or not the financial markets would accept or how they would respond to a conditional offer. Right. And so I think now we're seeing another wave of interested parties.
Okay. You mentioned that you're thinking about expanding, or not thinking about, it sounds like you are going to expand the boundaries for the HID program. Is it specifically the HID program?
It is specifically
Okay.
HID, yes.
When are you going to be finished with the determining, or are you already completed where, in your determination of what the new boundary is going to be?
We have not completed it,
Okay.
but likely later in the summer.
Okay. Georgetown, it sounds like it's one of the areas you plan to expand into. I've heard about the interest in Georgetown. What are the other areas of the city that you plan to?
Mount Vernon Triangle.
Mount Vernon Triangle. Okay. Any other expansion to the west in terms of the boundaries?
Well, over to Georgetown is west.
Yeah, it is west. But what about how much of Golden Triangle is already included? Is all of Golden
All of
Triangle
it.
already? Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Golden Triangle and downtown DC bid boundaries are basically what the original kind of general geography was. And what we're really seeing, particularly in Golden Triangle, that's where a lot of the conversions are taking place because there's a natural expansion off of DuPont Circle. You have a residential community north of DuPont, a lot of neighborhoods serving retail. And so there's momentum south of DuPont Circle along Connecticut Avenue for these conversions, as well as significant Class B and Class C office space that's looking to be repositioned.
Okay, and I don't always in my head know where the boundaries are for the bids versus the neighborhoods, but is all of DuPont Circle already included in the housing and no?
Oh, no, well, when you say all of
Kinda like
DuPont
south of
Circle,
DuPont?
south of DuPont.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
And north of DuPont is covered by the DuPont Circle bid.
Okay, okay.
And that is not
Probably will
included in
follow
it.
up just to see what you all are thinking about what that boundary looks like. We've been in conversations, just generally reaching out to folks in the private sector to see how the program is going. We're hearing great things about it, as you just reported. Also hearing great things about the private sector conversions that aren't going through our program. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest, which is significant and important. But to the extent we could get more of those happening, and if it means just sort of moving the boundary a bit to include some project that actually needs that incentive, then perhaps we should be thinking about that too. So.
And I just want to tie a couple concepts of what we've talked about today together. So here we are incentivizing housing in downtown. We're really fortunate in that, we have been, have 40 private sector, conversion projects going on. But this is why, but even with all of that, we now have lower housing starts and new construction. I don't mean technically new construction, but I mean new projects seeking construction permits now than we ever have had before. And that again underscores the importance of the Rental Act. What we're trying to do is develop more residential downtown because one, there's empty space available and it puts important real estate to more productive use. Two, residents and growing residential base in the District of Columbia is good for our tax base. And we can introduce that residential base downtown without displacing communities. But we need, reforms and improvements and modernization of our housing policies to continue to encourage private investment in downtown and elsewhere.
Got it. Let me just quickly just give us any updates around HANTA. I know it's generally sort of DHCD that program falls under, but if there's any updates you can provide about how it's going, I'd love to hear it.
I don't, is there a specific question maybe?
No, I mean,
Okay.
it's been something that has been of significant interest of residents in terms of our housing market, trying to get a sense of where you all are landing. I know you all have met and exceeded the affordable housing goals that the mayor had established. Is that correct?
Yes, we
12,000
did.
housing?
We did.
All right,
In
so-
fact, we delivered during that same timeframe more than 40,000 units
Right.
overall in the district.
Right, and so just getting a sense of how you're doing, because I think you maybe have fallen a bit short in terms of your targets for the housing and particularly affordable housing goals in the high need areas.
Well, I think I'll have to check the numbers. If we are falling short, it's only because we're not at the end of the time period. 2025 is what our goal was. We are projecting that through this year, we should be able to deliver the 12,000 new affordable housing unit goal. Having said that, one of the sort of portfolios that is being hit by what is going on in the affordable housing market in particular are projects that have been built and are now needing to convert to permanent financing. And that is maybe what may be contributing to our, how those numbers tally up at the end of this year. But we are going to continue to push to meet the goal. But more importantly, in my mind, is making sure that we stabilize and reset the affordable housing marketplace as well as residential marketplace. On HANTA, it's been a popular program among developers. That's what I've heard. But we will get back to you on specifics of how that project is performing.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me just ask the question I've asked of all the agencies that appear before the committee for performance oversight. Does DMPED have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer? And has the department received any complaints of sexual harassment in fiscal year 2024 and 2025 to date?
Thank you for the question. Adria Turner, Chief of Staff of DMPED. Yes, we have a primary sexual harassment officer and a secondary sexual harassment officer, and we have received no complaints in fiscal 2024 or fiscal 2025 to date.
Thank you.
Mhm.
What's your SBCB spend goal, or what was it for 2024, and where did you land in terms of achieving that goal?
So in reviewing our spend report for 24, we are confident that we will meet or exceed the target, but the target has not been finalized yet. So
Still reconciling.
yes, sir. So we expect that to be reconciled by Q3 of 2025. So that should be coming up soon. I will say that in fiscal 23, we achieved 103% of our target.
What was it? Do you have the numbers?
Yes, it was 13.2 million is what we achieved on top of a $12.7 million goal.
Got it. So I guess have you established your goal for
We have a
2025?
draft goal for 25, yes, sir. So it's at 3.8 right now. We expect that will likely be revised. And so that's our initial draft.
Got it. Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that I have today. I think there's a number of areas where we would like to get some follow-up, or we might actually initiate some follow-up based on the response that we got. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the record before we move to our next agency?
No, grateful for your time. Always grateful for your partnership. What lies ahead for us is continued work in diversifying our economy and resetting and focusing on our new housing goals for district because as we know, the cost of housing is a primary concern for all residents in the district. And so I'm excited that we're able to lead and move forward. And we have leadership from the top, from Mayor Bowser, as well as from you and others on the council. So that's what we're going to be focused on, diversifying our economy and producing more housing that's affordable to all.
Sounds good. I appreciate some of the things that you named specifically around the challenges in housing, moving some of the projects at DMPED forward, higher construction costs, interest rates, et cetera. So I'd like to be able to explore that in greater detail. This is a performance oversight hearing, but it might require this committee to follow up with you all just to really hone in on some of the challenges that you all are seeing and really get your thinking about how you move forward. And then we look forward to following up with you all and getting a date where you and I and members of your team and my team can go out to that community around Ward 8 to discuss with them how you outlined what that vision looks like and all the things that are in store for those projects in Ward 8. So thank you for that. Next, we're going to turn to the Office of People's Counsel, or OPC. The Office of the People's Counsel is an independent agency of the District of Columbia government. By law, the office advocates for consumers of natural gas, electric, telephone, and water services. OPC also represents the interests of district utility ratepayers before the DC Public Service Commission, federal regulators, and the courts. The office is mandated to conduct consumer education and outreach and may also choose to represent individual consumers with complaints related to their utility service and bills. With that, I'm going to call up our government witness for this agency, People's Counsel Sandra Matabu-Fry, and any members of her team who plans to testify, and we'll get everybody sworn in so we can proceed forward. And I'm gonna swear you all in before you get too comfortable. No worries. If y'all can raise your right hand. You mind standing and raising your right hand for me? And anybody who plans to testify, good morning to you all. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good to see you all. We are now in the afternoon, so no longer in the morning. Once you all settle in, you can begin your testimony. You'll have 7 minutes. But no worries, no worries. Just hit the base of your mic to turn the mic on and you can begin.
Hello, is that good? Good morning, Chairman McDuffie and members of the committee that are present visually or virtually, and of course, to the public. Good morning. I am Sandra Matavu-Fry. I am the People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. Joining me today are Deputy People's Counsel Karen Sistrunk and Chief of Staff Eric Hoy. First, of course, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share OPC's achievements and challenges in FY24. My testimony is divided into 3 parts: the road traveled, 2, a spotlight on emerging issues, and 3, preparing DC utility consumers for the road ahead or the future. FY24 was a busy and challenging year for OPC's litigation team. We actively participated in 63 cases before the Public Service Commission, the DC Court of Appeals, PJM, and federal agencies. We also filed joint comments with neighboring state utility advocates. Today, I will summarize 5 significant cases pending before the PSC that will have a direct and long-term impact on DC consumers and residents. A connecting thread with all of these cases is the immediate and direct harmful financial impact on consumers and long-term erosion of the public trust. We'll start with formal case 1176, the PEPCO rate case. On April 13th, 2023, PEPCO requested the PSC to increase its retail rates by $186.5 million over 3 years. PEPCO labeled the rate case Climate Ready Pathway Multi-Year Plan. It was the largest rate increase ever requested by DC Utility. Problem is that shareholders will receive higher dividends while district ratepayers will pay higher rates. In fact, the plan is a seismic shift in the utility rate regulation. It reverses over 100 years of established rate-making policy. It limits public participation, infringes on due process, and does not facilitate transparency. It overturns the long-standing regulatory principle that rates can only be approved if the company, and I say that again, the company demonstrates that their assets are used and useful and prudent. Historically, the PSC has reviewed the evidence in open court, where each witness is sworn and cross-examined. Here, the PSC awarded PEPCO a rate increase without conducting the required evidentiary hearing, which is necessary in a rate case where there are key facts being disputed. OPC filed an application for reconsideration with the PSC in December 2024, which the PSC denied. We will appeal the decision to the DC Court of Appeals. We have 60 days from the date that the PSC denied our application to file a notice of appeal to DCCA. And I believe that date is March 13th or so. So it's coming up, but it is in March. March 21st. Now I'll turn to project pipes. Washington Gas Light's accelerated pipe replacement plan was established 10 years ago to eliminate aging pipes and dangerous gas leaks in Washington Gas Light system. OPC was involved in the negotiations supporting fixing the most dangerous leaking pipes as a necessary safety measure. We recognize that public safety is important. The plan has been implemented in 3 phases. Phase 1 was opened in 2014 and phase 2 in 2020. OPC opposed phase 2 because Washington Gas was already over budget and behind schedule in phase 1. For the same reasons, OPC opposed WGL's request to initiate phase 2 in 2023. Instead, we urged the PSC to dismiss WGL's application entirely. Consistent with OPC's position, the PSC dismissed WGL's plan, but they directed WGL to submit a narrowly targeted replacement plan and align it with the district's climate plans. In September 2024, WGL filed a revised application with a $214 million price tag. The new plan is called DC Safe. WGL requests authorization to accelerate the recovery of old and aging facilities on its system and to recover the costs of its accelerated pipe replacement plan through a customer surcharge. OPC filed a motion to dismiss again. However, the PSC denied our request. We anticipate that the commission required the parties to file potential contested cases, potential disputes of fact, and we anticipate that a hearing of some sort will occur during the summer. Turning now to Washington Gas Light's rate case 1180. In January 2024, Washington Gas requested an annual rate increase of $45.6 million. If approved, this will raise rates by 11.19% and increase the residential customer charge by 25% from the current level. OPC has filed direct testimony in this case on January 24th, 2005, and we hopefully will expect to attend a hearing in the summer. Now I'd like to speak briefly to the PJM Capacity Auction Task Force. As we know, the PJM conducts a wholesale energy capacity auction twice a year to get the wholesale price for electricity for the upcoming year. Unfortunately, the PSC lacks authority to regulate the wholesale price of electricity. And since the auction is a wholesale transaction, the cost is directly passed on to DC consumers. What distinguishes the most recent auction is the magnitude of the increase, and that's what has caused a problem. At the local level, the PSC granted OPC's petition to establish a task force to develop a plan of action to prepare consumers for the increase. The task force is charged with developing education and outreach programs for the public. A task force proposal and report will be submitted to the PSC in June. The report, if approved, will establish what measures will be taken to protect DC consumers faced with this high increase. In addition, oh wait, maybe you'll ask me, because I'll tell you what OPC did.
We want to hear it.
Go? Okay, what OPC did, one, we filed the petition with the commission asking them to open up a task force, and I distinguished it from a working group because a task force has an end objective. The commission granted it, and they have had 2 meetings. It's my understanding it has had 2 meetings. And one thing that I also like about it is that it is inclusive, and members of the council, the PSC, PEPCO, the utilities, and OPC are involved. And I have found, during my experience, that that type of a group works better than having just a, singular working group that just, where the parties just, raise their issues and really don't change. This group has an objective in mind, and so I think that it will be successful. And what they are going to do, or what they are doing, is developing an education and outreach program that will advise consumers of what is coming and what actions they can take to mitigate it. And that is, that is something that we need, that needs to happen. And unfortunately, our hands are tied in terms of the real rate impact. OPC has personally retained the services of a technical person to provide us a more granular review of what the actual impact is on residential consumers. He is also going to look at the rate structures across the country to see if there's some way to mitigate the increase in rates in general, but particularly focusing on whether they're doing anything with respect to the auction. Okay, I'm going to turn now to OPC's petition to investigate PEPCO's solar interconnection process. In October, the commission approved OPC's petition to investigate PEPCO's interconnection process. OPC's petition responded to a high volume of consumer complaints about the extended time PEPCO took to install individual projects and not giving consumers the correct kilowatt credit. The PSC agreed with OPC that PEPCO had violated some of the PSC's rules. The outcome of the case will directly benefit consumers, as PEPCO was installing the wrong type of meters, charging close neighbors, vastly different prices, and it would also help the public by resolving the inconsistencies in the interconnection process. And most importantly, it will provide the PSC with more oversight and accountability over PEPCO's practices. Turning to section 2 now, spotlighting the emerging utility issues and trends. As we know, prices are rising overall. Our data indicates that utility rates are becoming unaffordable for many consumers in the district across various income levels. So it's spreading up. It's not just the low income folks that are suffering. Consumer complaints has drastically increased. Federal and local funding, as we know, is being scaled back. People are losing jobs. I'd like to tell you about the consumer complaint spike that we've had that predates the any of the major changes, particularly any changes that are being implemented by the federal government. OPC received a surge of consumer complaints in FY24 through December 31st. Specifically, OPC received 4,386 energy complaints and 1,264 water complaints, representing an increase of 15% over the prior year. For FY24, OPC conducted 1,334 outreaches. It's clear that assistance for utility consumers at or below the district's median income must remain in place. Without consumer assistance such as LIHEAP, energy efficiency rebates, and the help of nonprofit organizations, consumers may be forced to choose between food, housing, and paying for utilities. Solving this challenge will require government, utility, and consumer cooperation. And I think this challenge has become more real than ever. Preparing DC consumers for the future, OPC's efforts to enhance outreach and education programs. OPC continues with its traditional outreach and education programs, such as attending ANC and civic associations meetings. We distribute the OPC Connection newsletter to over 3,300 subscribers. In addition, we distribute more than a dozen other correspondence, including press releases and consumer alerts over our social media platforms. Our Consumer Services Division convenes quarterly social service summits, inviting representatives from DC social service agencies to share information about their services to DC residents. And we consider that a holistic approach because frequently our consumers come with multiple problems, and it's easier, it's good to be able to refer them to the appropriate agency. We are also enhancing our consumer education program. We have established an education platform that teaches about the effectiveness of energy efficiency measures, how to interpret utility bills, and explain how climate change will have a local and global impact. On September 25th, 2024, OPC held a Clean Energy Summit. This event brought together OPC, DOEE, DSEU, and the DC Green Bank to provide consumers with essential information about clean energy options, including funding assistance. In October 2024, OPC held a two-day climate change and environmental justice advocacy workshop for high school students to learn from OPC and DC representatives about the utility regulatory process and how to advocate for utility issues impacting and environmental issues impacting their communities. I'm very pleased to report that approximately 50 students attended the summit, and it was during the school term. We are developing webinars on various utility topics for all age groups. I'm particularly proud of our language access service, as we have consistently received high marks from the DC Office of Human Rights. With our educational materials published in 7 languages, I hope to reach an even broader base of non-English speaking consumers. We also advertise in the Black media and local non-English speaking newspapers. I'm also pleased to announce that OPC has been certified to participate in the DCPS Adopt a School program at Anacostia High School to work with students studying environmental issues, and I'm excited about that. Finally, I was honored to have received the State Leadership of Clean Energy Award from the Clean Energy States Alliance, CESA. CESA is a leading national coalition of state energy agencies working to expand energy every year on an annual basis. And I will just, by way of background, we have worked with CESA for many years, and my staff, they have participated and they have even spoken at some of the conferences and meetings that CESA has held. So we have a very good relationship, and I definitely appreciate the recognition, but it also goes to my staff as usual. In conclusion, during this time of great uncertainty, OPC will remain committed to the core mission of advocating, educating, and protecting DC consumers. We are available for questions.
Thank you for your testimony, and congratulations on your award to you and your team, as you
Thank you.
mentioned. We do have some questions, not many, but we do have some questions for you this afternoon. I want to start with a very important issue that you raised in your testimony on page 4 regarding PJM. The district customers, as I understand it, can expect a nearly 25% increase in their Washington gas bills starting in August of 2025 of this year due to the PJM interconnection capacity auction that you discussed earlier. I want to ask you just a few questions about your response to these issues and how you all plan on assisting residents who will be most affected by these rate increases. So if you could just talk briefly about what that auction entails for residents who are not familiar with that PJM capacity auction process, and then I have just a couple of follow-up questions. I know you mentioned that you're gonna, PSC approved your petition to start a task force. So we'll talk a little bit about that too, but I want, just as a threshold matter, for you to just talk a little bit about that capacity auction that PJM performs.
Well, again, there's very little that we could do from a regulatory perspective about whatever PJM does or whatever the result is. It is based on sort of the market rate, complex formula of how they arrive at it. It's my understanding that in this instance, there was a shortage of capacity because some of the plants were not functioning. And so we have really no control of that. The only thing that we can do, and there is something that is more substantive or more proactive, we have filed with the joint filing that I mentioned at FERC. We are requesting that that FERC or PJM revise some of its protocols, some of its schedules or practices that would result and alleviate some of the pressure on local consumers or on their consumers or clients. So we'll have to see what they come up with.
Okay. What is the joint filing before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that you referenced?
Yes, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I think you referenced, you said there was a joint filing with FERC?
Yes, we filed with FERC.
Okay.
Because FERC and the PJM, they come under FERC.
Right, okay. You said it was a
But they
joint
don't.
filing? You said, I thought I heard you say that it was a joint filing.
Yes, a joint filing with other consumer advocates.
Okay, I wanted to just
It was
clarify that.
New Jersey, Maryland, and OPC,
Got it,
DC.
got it. Okay, New Jersey, Maryland, OPC, DC. And just talk a little bit about the task force and how you expect it will be able to address some of these issues and really support residents.
Well, of course, it was still at the very formative
Sure,
aid stages. So you're getting my perspective without, I'm looking forward to what else the other members will say. But again, because of the restraints, probably the thing that we can do most is continue to do what OPC has been doing and what the commission has been doing in its sphere. I think Commissioner Thompson explained some of what they're doing. That's the type of thing that has to be done. So continuing to file before FERC and ask them, to PJM to make changes that would result in not as volatile or as high a rate. We think that's important to look at rate structures to see if there's anything that we can do to ameliorate that high rate, to make it a bit lower. And we at OPC will continue to fight vigilantly to keep the distribution rates lower because that has the pancake effect of increasing the energy burden for consumers. So and that's why everyone is essentially in shock over the auction results, because when we use that, and I don't know if I have before me the impact of the recent auction, how much consumers would pay. I think
about $10.
about $10 more per
Right,
bill.
which
And
is
that's,
significant.
sounds like for us, it sounds like, oh, that's not much, but it is.
Sounds like it's much for me. I'm sure for my wife. Yeah, no, it's significant because you're talking about the cumulative effect of what
Yes.
everybody is experiencing,
so
what
if it's
everybody is
$10,
paying.
It's a lot.
Absolutely,
It's a
absolutely.
lot.
And I appreciate that.
So it's one of those, interesting exercises, but I think something will happen, something positive will happen.
Okay.
I
And you talked about, you've contracted with Synapse Energy Economics to evaluate rate impacts resulting from the auction.
Okay.
Just, you all have a timeframe they're already contracted. What are they going to be looking to do, and what's the timeframe in which you expect to get a work product from them?
Okay, we have not, obviously, we haven't gotten a result in April. Yeah, so we don't expect to see any results until April.
Okay.
We have back and forth conversations, but what I can say is that the scope of the contract was to have them look at the rate structures, to look at the impact of the increases on consumers. What else is there? No, okay, thank you. The study will also identify and discuss the driving factors behind the high wholesale market price itself. The study will examine and discuss potential changes that should occur with PJM, including ways of removing delays in bringing power plants in the queue or interconnection queue reforms.
Okay.
The study will provide a high-level quantitative analysis of whether or how the delays in withdrawal of power plants may hinder DC's ability to meet its RPS requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, again,
Got
it
it.
says that the initial increase is estimated to be $10 per month.
Okay. All right. I want to ask you about another case. I was trying to find it in your testimony. Is it 171 or is it?
Mhm.
You mentioned 1050, formal case number 1050 in your testimony. And then I think there's one that you didn't mention, formal case number 1171. It's our understanding that Pepco was found in violation of a number of regulations related to meter reading and billing practices. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And
Yes,
they were audited as a result?
that's what the auditor recommended, that going forward, solar for all facilities should be required to provide both historical and current metering and billing data to the commission. And doing so would make it easier to calculate the remediation necessary for the subscribers.
Okay. And is there any impact on the cost with CREFs as a result of the PSC's audit and the findings?
And that, well, not as a result of the auditor's findings, but consistent with the auditor's findings. I mean, and that's what precipitated our petition, because we were getting calls from consumers saying that the price was exorbitant and wasn't what they originally contemplated. And more frequently, we were getting comments and complaints that the time frame, that it could extend to almost a year before their system was even close to being installed. And I know that one consumer came to us and said that and this was a person who had an interest in, solar issues. And he said, I just dropped out. I'm not going to do it. And that's what we want to avoid, because he was a committed consumer. He had a background in environmental issues and he opted out. That's tragic.
I mean, you certainly want to avoid that.
Mhm.
I want to turn to where you talked about the complaints, which are pretty significant, increase in the complaints that you all had. You reported a 46% increase, or 786 more complaints filed in fiscal year 2024 than in fiscal year 2023. I think you listed some of the challenges that might attribute to which you might attribute these complaints, but I want to give you an opportunity to expound on that and talk about your agency's efforts to resolve the complaints that you're getting, and whether you're experiencing any challenges in terms of your staffing to be able to respond to the complaints that you're getting.
Yes, well, first of all, I have to say and commend my consumer service staff. They do a tremendous amount of work, and I know you've probably heard it before, but they really, really do. And when this summer's spike came up, they were so overwhelmed. It was incredible. I believe on some days we received maybe 90 consumer complaints in one day. The receptionist was, didn't know what to do, and then we had to farm them out to the various representatives. But what we did was that we, noticed that we took full advantage. We knew that what was happening and that action had to be taken. I'm just sharing you what we did. And what I did first was I knew that we didn't have the manpower to support processing of the complaints in a timely way. And I did retain 4, I believe, temporary workers who would assist our permanent consumer representatives in doing some of the administrative work to alleviate the burden on them. And that worked out really, really well. The other thing we did, we looked at our CMS database and looked at ways that we could ensure, we had to develop SOPs to ensure that the representatives were using the most efficient way of putting in the complaint data. And then we also had, one of the reasons, and I don't know if you're really sort of addressing this, one of the reasons that we were able to achieve a, substantial decrease in the closures is that during that time frame, we worked with PEPCO, and PEPCO agreed to expedite the registration of the consumers in the arrearage program. And what that did was that it allowed us to close the case quickly because PEPCO had almost a 1-day approval period. And they could immediately then qualify for LIHEAP and other, financial assistance programs. Before, we had to wait for the process, go through the queue, and wait for, get it to DOEE. That extenuated some of the time that we incurred. But this was, working cooperatively, and they did, and I don't remember the number, my staff is here, but I don't remember the amount, how many they were able to do that, but that was like a significant reason why there was a lower closure rate.
Have you seen do you still have those temporary hires that you brought on to address the increase in complaints, or has the increases sort of stemmed so that you don't need that additional support in your staffing? What's the status of
The increasing?
We still.
Can you just state your name and position?
Sure. I'm Eric Cord, the Chief of Staff. So we still have 2 temporary staff members working with us. But we also have a couple of vacant positions that we're close to hiring in our Consumer Services Division, that will help us in the out month.
So you'll have adequate staffing. Yes. You do have adequate staffing, and you also are looking to hire additional staff.
Right.
That's correct.
I'm concerned about some of the sort of external forces that are impacting employment or unemployment in District of Columbia, the expectation that there might be people who need assistance and can't afford to pay certain bills. Just making sure that you have the support that you need to be able to address those complaints, concerns, requests as they come in.
One of the things that our CMS does that we're using is to identify trends, and that will help us to identify where the complaints are coming from and the nature of the complaints so that we can direct financial assistance or education to those specific instances. Right now, we have maybe 7 categories, but that can be even more granular when we get out there, and we would know, but based upon our surveys and just being out in the community, okay, so why can't you pay your bill? oh, you lost your job, or, that type of a thing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, the issues that we're doing.
Right. How about your water services division? How are things going there in terms of staffing, complaints, concerns? I know that in FY 2024, you have requested an enhancement for the water services division. I believe it was approximately $100,000, which ultimately you did not get. How are things going in that division? And do you see any,
Karen Sistrunk, the Deputy People's Counsel, will address that. She is.
if you could just hit the button in the base of your
Water
mic,
division.
just turn your microphone on and just state your name and position for the record.
Okay. Good afternoon, Karen Sistrunk, Deputy People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. I would say that at the current time, our water division is actually, I would say, working quite well with the resources that we currently have. We were able to handle our complaints and consumer education and outreach, and the attorney that we have at the current time is able to take care of the legal issues as they arise. And we do have sufficient funding at the current time for outside technical consultants or legal consultants when necessary.
Okay, thank you for that. Speaking of consultant, we understand you've engaged a consultant to perform a utility affordability study. What's the status of that?
Go ahead.
Okay. We have actually hired a consultant, and we are ready to start the affordability study. And this affordability study is, I believe, the third one we've done over the last 20 years. This one is one where we will examine the rising energy burden in the District of Columbia currently. And it will look at ways to mitigate the energy burden, and I'm sure at this point, the energy burden is rising because of many things, increasing utility rates, the cost of grid modernization, the cost of the energy transition or decarbonization in the district. And of course, we all know about our wholesale price increase challenges. So this study will look at all of that. But what's interesting about this study also, I'm excited about, is that the consultant will conduct a survey of affordability rate structures that are being used throughout the country. And we're hoping that information that we can use that information here in the district in our various proceedings looking at affordability, because at this point in the district, we do need to look at other ways to help consumers with the rising energy burden. It's only going to get worse.
And FY 2024, the office created a new metric to open and close cases within 90 days to satisfy its KPIs. You noted that in fiscal year 2024, you were able to achieve a 75% rate for cases closed within 90 days. Just talk about where things are right now. What do you attribute being able to get to 75%? And increasing that rate? I believe it was higher than the prior rate of closure.
Yeah, well, the rate in 2025 is also 75%, but for FY 24, I think becoming more familiar with our CMS system, our new technology, as Sandra mentioned earlier, following our standard operating procedures and just, putting information in the system more timely. So just, becoming more familiar with the technology that we have,
Okay.
Helped us tremendously.
Okay. You mentioned in your testimony that OPC's been certified to participate in DCPS Adopt a School program at Anacostia High School. That sounds really exciting, and I'm really interested in seeing how that goes. How'd you all even sort of come up with the idea of approaching or applying for that program and that certification? I'm intrigued by it. I'm pleased that you're doing it. and definitely want to be able to follow up once you've got some information about how things are going there. But when you expect to get that started?
Well, we have communicated with Anacostia High School for some time, and we knew what they were doing and, the types of programs that they were interested in. And we offered to work with them. But we weren't aware of the formalized process for doing it. And as I've said, as with most good ideas, it came from staff directly. And we had a staff member who did the administrative component, making certain that we filled out the application. And there are other members of the staff that are addressing curriculum that we can do, and as well as the format, how we would do it, whether we would do it, on a weekend basis or during the day. Would there be visits? What would it look like? Now that we have it, we want to make sure that it looks like something that continues to provide value.
Okay. And just sort of building on some of the things you've done in FY24, you mentioned in your testimony that you hosted an environmental justice and advocacy workshop for DC Public School juniors and seniors, which is, I think, another great way to engage young folks in the important work that you all are doing and really engage them around things they're learning in some of their classes. You mentioned that there were 50 students that participated, and it was during the school day. Do you all track which schools were represented by those 50 students?
Karen, you should go.
Yes, we do. And
And I'm not going to ask you to list it right now, but I'm curious if you maybe in follow-up can provide a sense of sort of how it breaks down. I'd be interested, the committee would be interested in seeing which schools engaged and had representation amongst those 50 students and maybe ways to further engage in your efforts around that. Do you all plan to do another one of those this year or no?
It's not scheduled for this year, but we are looking at doing another youth advocacy workshop. Again, I have to say it was quite exciting, and the students were very excited. And it was a way to, I would say, bring many agencies and organizations together to empower youth to advocate, for concerns in their community. And it's just one of the tools we are using to, really start with the youth in terms of working towards environmental justice, supporting and moving towards success of achieving the district's climate goals. And you have to start with the youth. And so we do want to hold another youth advocacy workshop. And I will say that the youth were very excited.
Okay.
And we sought citywide youth, but it was concentrated in just a few schools.
Yeah. Well, do you remember where you hosted it?
We hosted it in our office.
In your office, got it.
Yes. And we hosted it in our conference room.
Okay.
And lunch in our lounge.
Got it. Does the agency have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer, and has the agency received any complaints of sexual harassment in fiscal year 2024 or 2025 to date?
Yes, we do have a sexual harassment officer, and there have been no complaints either in 24 or 25. Follow the mayor's guidelines.
Got it. And we were happy to see that you exceeded your SBE spend goal. What was your goal for, I don't know if you have the numbers for 2023 and where you ended up for 2023. 2024, you might still be reconciling, but if you have the numbers for 2024, I'd be interested in that.
Sure. Yes, we do. For FY24, our goal was 1.1 million, and our expenditures came in at 1.4 million, so that was 127.4% of the goal. And for FY23, the goal was 1.3 million, and our expenditures were 1.2 million, so that came in at around 107%.
Got it. And what, do you have your goal established for FY 2025?
I don't have it listed.
Okay.
No, they have not given us that yet.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. Okay, I don't have any additional questions at this time. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we move on to our next agency?
What I would say, and I'm not going to be long and I'm not going to preach, but I think that we are embarking on very, very interesting times, not even interesting times. I would have said that a couple of years ago, but really bad times. And we really have to circle the wagon in DC and protect consumers. And, you know, I don't hate to say it, but it sounds, you know, like something you just say, but it really, really is important. And I think that we're going to see some really serious impacts as a result of changes everywhere, not only the federal changes, but the local changes. And we are going to have to do something. And I think also it is important to have these collaborations between, you know, consumer advocates outside and the environmental groups and all of the lay advocates that operate in DC. We have to be cohesive. We have to get together and, you know, still recognizing that there are differences and different obligations, you know, who represents whom and why they do it and, you know, that type of thing. But the end result is that we need to come together and come up with some effective resolutions to something. We're not going to be able to resolve everything, but the ones that we can, we should take an aggressive approach to doing so.
I appreciate those comments, and as we expect to receive the mayor's budget in early April, what's the date? Early April 2nd, I believe is the date that we've agreed to. It's going to be important that you all have all the supports and resources you need to continue to advocate and protect consumers as we approach potentially uncharted territory. So I appreciate your testimony and
We
let the
appreciate
committee
your
know
support.
if there are concerns that you all have in terms of resource allocation or needs, so you all can continue to do the great work of advocating for consumers.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Chairman McDuffie. We appreciate your continued support, and we look forward to working with you and your people, your
Thank you.
staff.
Thank you.
Going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our third and final agency for oversight today is the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture, established in 2018 by the council. The office serves as a central point of contact between the district and businesses that make up the nighttime economy. Since its creation, the duties of the office have expanded to include providing trainings for nightlife businesses that promote public safety and security for patrons during the nighttime hours, collaborating with the District Department of Transportation and the Office of Planning to increase public transportation accessibility during the nighttime hours, and meeting regularly with the public to address concerns regarding laws and regulations that affect the nighttime economy. The office works closely with the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development to assist struggling nighttime businesses with grant programs and resources. And with that, I'm going to call up our government witness for this agency, and that's Director of the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, Jackie Reyes. Good afternoon to you. If you don't mind raising your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may be seated. And once you settled in, you can provide your testimony to the committee.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And good afternoon. Buenas tardes, Chairman McDuffie, members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, and staff. I am Jackie Reyes Llanes, the Director of the Mayor's Office on Community Affairs, and I am pleased to present testimony today on the accomplishments of the Mayor's Office on Nightlife and Culture, better known as MONC, in the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 to date. The Mayor's Office on Nightlife and Culture, MONC, strives to foster collaborations between the nightlife establishment, residents, and key stakeholders across the district. Our community outreach strategy prioritizes proactive engagement with small business owners, business leaders, and advisory neighbor commissioners and community organizations, addressing concerns and to promote a responsible, thriving and nightlife ecosystem. Today, I will discuss the work and efforts led by the office and the Mayor's Office on Nightlife, FY24 to F25 to date. Monk's community outreach strategy focuses on fostering collaboration and transparency between the nightlife establishment, residents, and other stakeholders throughout the district. In addition to community engagement, Monk plays a crucial role in supporting small businesses and the nightlife establishments by helping them navigate government resources and regulations. Collaboration remains a cornerstone for our work. We coordinate with agencies such as the Metropolitan Police Department, the Department of Buildings, the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protections, the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration, the Department of Public Works, and others to address community concerns, including noise, safety, and traffic management, by serving as a bridge between businesses and residents and government agencies. We help facilitate practical solutions and enhance communication across stakeholders. We also participate in town halls, cultural forums, and in citywide events to connect with different communities, sharing information about key programs, licensing updates, and public safety initiatives. This allows all parties to be informed and involved in the decision-making process that impact both the nightlife industry and the surrounding neighborhoods. As we look forward to FY25, I'm excited to see an expansion of community and culture. We will be celebrating World Pride here in the district, more robust and inclusive theater, and expanding the district world-class restaurants. Monk remains committed to fostering and thriving nightlife industry and the business environment, while supporting Mayor Bowser's strategic vision for disease recovery and rehabilitation. We look forward to build on our successes and ensuring that the district remains a vibrant and inclusive place for all. I want to thank the team at Monk for the steady leadership, Associate Director Salima Khalid, and our Community Outreach Specialist, Jaliyah Johnson. To reach out to the Monk, please call 202-442-8150 or via email at nightlife@dc.gov. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony. I look forward to answer questions to you and the committee as you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate it. I do have just a few questions for you. And as I have with all the agencies that appear before the committee, I generally start the questions with those that are related to public witness testimony that we got. We got some public witness testimony from John Guggenmoos, who chairs the DC Nightlife Council, and he testified about several initiatives that the New York City equivalent of your office has successfully implemented. I don't know if you had the opportunity to review his testimony, but I'd be curious about just your thoughts about sort of resources that Monk gets relative to other similar agencies in other jurisdictions, and whether you think there needs to be any additional supports or funding for the Office of Nightlife to do its important work.
Yes, I haven't had the chance to review the testimony, but I will tell you, council member, that all the mayor's office on community affairs, we serve within the budget of the mayors and also the district's budget. So, and we are in the cabinet position that we can work out with other directors and agencies. So we have sufficiency.
All right, I appreciate the response, and I know there's a budget process currently going on, and as I mentioned earlier, we expect to get the mayor's budget in early April. Another person who testified before the committee during our public witness hearing was Jean Hamza, who testified that Monk should be shifted to be under DEMPED. They testified that, and I'm quoting here, the Mayor's Office of Nightlife should be the DEMPED for the district after 5 p.m. Close quote. They testified that this would prevent the office from being an overlooked agency. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to the suggestion there of moving the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and placing it under the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic
request council member of the testimony, but at the mayor's office and community affairs, all of the offices, we serve as a soft touch to the administration. And when it comes to the nightlife, we also serve as such that we serve in the mayor's office, we are connectors. So I do believe that the mayor has the mayor's office on nightlife with a purpose to be a soft touch, also to have her ears and eyes to the ground through the mayor's office on nightlife.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll note that Deputy Mayor Nina Albert,
And we work very closely with all of the agencies.
yeah, she didn't seem keen on that idea of moving it, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond.
Yes.
Each public witness who testified about the mayor's office of nightlife testified with really great support for Salima Khalid to serve as director of the mayor's office of nightlife. And I wanted just to really acknowledge and put on the record that testimony and that support for the deputy that you alluded to earlier today. There's been a vacancy for several months in the office. And I believe since October, it's been vacant. So if you could, I want to hear about some updates there, but I want to, in particular, one witness stated that the mayor's office director position had not even been posted to begin the hiring process. So just wanted to get your feedback on what the status of that position is. Is it posted? Do you plan to hire for it?
Yes. So we are working with the mayor's office on talent and appointment on this position. And I will tell you that I'm very appreciative of Salima's work, hard work. I can attest for her hard work, but the mayor this is an appointed positions, and it's at the discretion of the mayor to appoint directors.
Is it open now, though? Is the position like been
I will
posted?
follow up on that and to check on the website.
Okay.
And I will get back on you on that.
Okay. Any concerns with the limited capacity that exists? I think it's a two-person office and it's down to one.
It is, but we have a 13 we are a cluster of 12 other offices, and when there's a need, the mayor's office, because it is the nightlife, it has LGBTQ, it has Latinos, it has Asians, so we have a cluster of the mayor's office on community affairs to serve as also as a liaison to this office.
Okay. And I misspoke earlier. But my last point I wanted to highlight from our public witness testimony was really about the office's budget for the mayor's office of nightlife. I misspoke earlier and said that it's a two-person office. It's actually a three-person office, but it's down to two people currently. But it does have a budget for 3 staff members with limited resources. And I take your point that you just made earlier about the support from other offices. Do you feel like the staffing, though, as a 3-person office, albeit with 1 vacancy, do you feel like a 3 FTE office is adequate for this office?
So we have a strategic planning, and we make sure that we are in communication with all of the other MOCA offices, that the work is not sacrificed. So we do, when a need happens, we work with other offices. And in regards to the budget, we fall into the mayor's and into A0. So we have sufficient funding for whatever initiative from the mayor's office on nightlife and culture.
Okay.
So I feel very confident.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to really sort of amplify what we are hearing from people in the community who I know support the work that you all are doing, but would love to see more of it. In the pre-hearing responses that you all provided to us, the office stated that the commission on nightlife and culture has only met twice since fiscal year 2023.
Yes.
Due to quorum issues. And this is deeply concerning, as you might imagine. The committee in the past few weeks has received 6 nominations for the commission.
Yes.
Just wanted to get your insights as to what's been going on with the commission and why there's been challenges with achieving a quorum to do their work.
Yes, so I will take responsibility on this, council member, and I will get back to you and follow up with the status on the commission. On the commission, I know that we needed to reappoint some of the commissions, and if that is the case, I will follow up on that.
I think I already know, but we did receive, the council did receive 6 nominations.
Okay.
For the commission from MOTA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I will make sure that once we get the appointment from you, we'll make sure that they get,
Their meeting?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm talking about how you all are engaging the community of businesses and residents that make up the nightlife community. And if there are distinctions in how you all are engaging the businesses with how you're engaging the residents, I'd love to hear the differences between the two, because we do get,
Mm-hmm.
I won't even say concerns necessarily. I think more concerns from residents,
Yes.
but then suggestions and recommendations from businesses about how to best work with the office.
Office. I will, maybe I'll follow up with you in those concerns, but I do know that Salima and Jalina are very hands-on, and I know that they're on a daily basis, that when they do the check-ins, they're always having face-to-face meetings with constituents and businesses. So I can attest on that. So, and also they're very approachable. So, and if that is not the case, I would like to know, because I know that every day they're out there in the ground.
And to be clear, the concerns that we get from residents are not about the office.
Okay,
They're about the businesses
businesses.
that make up that nightlife
Okay.
area of those communities.
And we are part of a lot of the business corridors, and I know that we are very engaging.
I don't know, I can attest to that. I've been on walks with the office, so yeah, I can attest that
Okay.
they're very engaging. World Pride is expected to be one of the biggest events in the district this year, and wanted to just hear how the mayor's office of nightlife is really engaging with the nightlife community and the LGBTQ community,
Yes.
just to prepare for the festival.
Yes, so we have weekly meetings on the World Pride.
Okay.
We are very enhanced with all of the other community affairs offices, because in all of the pockets we fill in, we fill in the blanks. You know, we have Asians, we have Latinos, we have veterans, returning citizens, the nightlife. So every week we have a meeting and with other agencies also, and the Homeland Security
Got
in
it.
the district.
Okay.
So
So things are going well in terms of preparation.
we are very positive on engaging everyone and to be very included with everyone.
Okay.
So
I'm asking the question I've asked of all the agencies around sexual harassment. Does the agency have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer? And just, I expect that they don't have it in the mayor's office of nightlife. So tell me where that
yes,
officer or officers are housed, and specifically which agency, and has the department received, and has the mayor's office of nightlife received any complaints of sexual harassment in FY '24 or FY '25 to date?
so as you know, we follow up in the class of the mayor's office, the executive office of the mayor.
Mhm.
Our sexual harassment officer is Lanisha Quote, and that has all the clusters.
Okay.
And in regards into the mayor's office on nightlife, she will be the person
Okay.
that have that.
Has that office though specifically had any complaints?
It is not to my knowledge, and then the person who has that record, it will be the sexual harassment
Okay,
officer.
can you just confirm though, and then maybe circle back with us?
Yes.
I suspect that,
Yes,
well, I don't even.
and
want
the
to-
secondary
like that.
person for the sexual harassment officer is Jerica Jones.
Okay, yeah, if you could just follow up with the committee specifically about whether
Will do.
the Office of Nightlife has had any sexual harassment complaints in FY '24, FY '25 to date. That's all the questions that I have for you at this time. There's some follow-up that I think we'll do, and you'll provide to the committee. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we adjourn?
Thank you for your service, and I also thank our staff, Salima and Jaliyah for the great work. And, I'll keep looking forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony today. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all the witnesses who provided testimony today. This marks the end of today's performance oversight hearing. This is our final performance oversight hearing of this cycle. And I think it's important to thank all of our witnesses who signed up to provide testimony in our hearings, particularly our public witnesses who carved out times in their busy schedule to meet with and testify before the committee. I want to thank our government witnesses who testified before us in this performance oversight cycle. The mayor will release her fiscal year 2026 budget and financial plan on April 2nd, and the budget office at the council will soon announce the budget oversight hearing schedule for the committees at the Council of the District of Columbia. There being no further business before the Committee on Business and Economic Development, the time is now 1:10 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you. And we'll have a budget